Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. There was a quiet knock in the night. Camille rushed fearfully to the window, squinted her nearsighted eyes, peering into the darkness, but could see nothing, and asked in a trembling voice, "Who's there? Open up," she heard outside. "It's Michael Mansfield," cried the landlady, who recognized her husband's voice. "You're back." She ran out onto the veranda, and a moment later let in her daughter and a man with sunken and tired eyes. It took Camille a good hard look to recognize her husband. She rushed toward him with unbridled joy, and he turned away and said, "I'm dirty. We must wash, then we'll rejoice together. Now the water is warm on the stove. Maybe you should eat first." The woman glowed, casting her eyes on the long-awaited man. "I'll eat only a little. Don't feed me too much. I haven't had a crumb in my mouth for a week." Michael threw off his jacket, hung it on a hook by the door with the cloth of his hand. "Where have you been, Michael? It's been so long. At least you wrote, didn't you?" Camille asked with reproach in her voice. "I couldn't. I'll tell you everything afterwards. We didn't know what to think. My sister had already mourned you so many times as if you were dead, and I believed you were alive, so I went out. But all sorts of things crossed our minds. We thought maybe you'd been murdered or something. Good for you for not burying me before my time. And you didn't get married. How's Ethan sleeping?" "He's in town for work. He's got a good job now," his wife said with quiet joy. Michael sat down at the table, drank a cup of milk and bread, and said, "Enough. Camille, pour me some water and get the laundry ready. I can rub your back," the woman offered. "Don't," Michael replied categorically. His eyes seemed alien. "Go to bed. I'll sleep on the couch." "What is this?" Camille sighed heavily. "A bed. Nothing. The main thing is that I'm back to live again. Sleep." There was silence in the house. Camille lay in bed and closed her eyes. She remembered her younger years, hot meetings with her husband, when they both treated each other with tenderness. Why was he now so alien and indifferent? Is there nothing left of their love? Now he is a stranger around and not underfoot. What to do? How to live? What to say to him to make him realize that it is impossible for her to live without his love, tenderness, affection? At least say a nice word. "Christina, are you asleep?" Camille asked her sister. "I'm awake. Where do you think he's been all this time?" "I think he's been hiding. I think he's been hiding. I guess that's his fate. What's next?" "How should I know?" "Hurry up. I have to get up early tomorrow." "At least he hugged me, kissed me, said affectionate words, said sadly, 'I thought you were a woman.' Let him do what he wants. There's his son. We have a family. Maybe she'll come back to reason in time. She'll feel a man in her." The door creaked open. Michael came in, lay down on the couch, and after a few minutes his measured breathing was heard. "Asleep." Lovingly thought Camille, let him rest. He came back. "We're all together at last. This is a great happiness." The next day, when the son Ethan learned that his father had returned, did not even talk to him, glumly gathered himself, and roughly whispered so that his mother did not hear. "Zekum do not intend to communicate. You can go wherever you want. If you stay, I'll go myself. I don't like being in a house with a criminal. Are you going to work?" the mother asked. "I'm on my way," replied the son. He looked angrily at his father and ran out the door. "He's grown up," said the father. Pain sparkled in his eyes. He took a deep breath and slumped his shoulders. "Growing up, thank God," Camille replied. "Where on earth have you been?" asked the wife. "On a job, on a construction site. And then it so happened that the owner refused to pay. Hired some thug to deal with us quietly with the laborers. I ran away at night, left everything behind, walked through the woods to get home. So I didn't write anything. Everything was left there quickly." Michael told a story he made up. It was a lie. He had served 5 years in the colony, sacrificing himself for his son. Now he escaped when exhausted by the heavy regime and beatings, pretended to be sick, won a place in the prison hospital, and from there he cheated. He made a daring escape. At night while the convoy dozed off. 5 years ago, he told the family to move to the country to his wife's sister Christina, explained himself vaguely. He sold his apartment in the city for debt, work problems, and he needed to get away for a while. Did he actually pay whoever he needed to pay with the money from the apartment? Hired a lawyer to keep the family from knowing about the accident. That wasn't easy. Investigators insisted on questioning his wife and son. Even with money, Michael Mansfield barely managed to keep his family from being tortured by the investigation. He couldn't buy himself out of jail time, but he saved his wife and son from a terrible blow. For how long? No place to live. He came home like a beaten dog when he felt sorry for his family. And now what? Life in prison had turned Michael into a cruel, hard man. He already regretted that he didn't tell his wife everything at once and sacrificed his son. And all for what? Here's the son, now he turns his nose up. He didn't appreciate his father's deed. So what was it all for then? Turning away from his wife, Michael sat down at the table, put his hands on his head, and remembered the terrible day of the crime. The happy family life in town was marked by Ethan's 16th birthday. Michael fulfilled his son's wish by putting him behind the wheel of his old Niva. Ethan waved off enrollment in a driving school, promising his father not to take the car. And if he did drive it, then only together outside the city, where field roads are almost devoid of traffic. His son's passion for driving awakened with furious force. Against his wishes, his father enrolled Ethan in the best of the city's driving schools. But all for nothing. One day crossed all the family's aspirations and separated Michael from his family for years to come. The son took the car keys from his father's jacket late at night in Thane, sat behind the wheel, deciding to take an unauthorized ride through the city streets. At an intersection, a traffic light was stirring with a yellow light. A woman with a stroller was hurriedly stepping across the crosswalk. Ethan didn't even have time to slow down. He didn't look at the road for the running lights. Mommy realized too late that the approaching car was not going to brake forcefully and pushed the stroller away from herself. She herself was hit, fell on the hood. The car hit and flew off for a couple of meters in the ditch. The child in the stroller was orphaned in an instant, but the boy did not immediately realize what had happened. He was horrified when he heard a bang. Too late, when he saw the obstacle in the road. And then he just stepped on the gas. Other drivers immediately slowed down, jumped out of their cars before they could save the baby, got the license plate number of the perpetrator. The son drove home, put the car back where it was, didn't say anything to his father. Michael learned about the accident the next morning, when the son had already left for school and the wife to work. There was a knock on the door. Entered the investigator, a strict inspector and an investigator of the prosecutor's office. They introduced themselves as Michael. Your car was used in a hit-and-run collision with Citizen Smith. The victim died at the scene. You are detained on suspicion of murder and failure to render aid to the victim. How drunk Michael perceived what was going on. Got himself together, fumbled for his keys. The car was parked there on the hood with traces of the collision and bloodstains. All of this was an unthinkable, impossible event. A painful thought crossed out all existence before and after. Son. From then on, the investigation began. Quickly, however transformed. Witnesses were confused in their testimony. They said they couldn't see the driver's face in the headlights. One of them claimed it was a younger man behind the wheel. Taking the blame for his son, Michael got 10 years in a maximum security penal colony. His life in custody did not immediately go well. After learning about the crime, the man was beaten to a pulp on the first day. Long unbearable 5 years passed in a gloomy fog, which left dark misfires on the heart. After the final beating, Michael refused to get up. He was dragged to the hospital, left without much obstruction, thinking that the prisoner was already at death's door, and not today, so tomorrow he would give up. Having gained strength, having thoroughly studied the plan of the area, the man made an escape. He reached his family on foot, longing to live a little, to see his family and son. But it hurts in his chest to lie to his wife. He can't bear to tell her himself or to wait for the police. Still, at least I get a little bit of freedom. My son doesn't need me. So now an honest man, a loving father, will have to bear the cross of imprisonment. At that time, his wife gave a voice to distract him from his bad thoughts. "Poor you," Camille moaned. "Maybe you should hide." "I'm tired of hiding." "Let it be what it will be. I will live as I can," calmly replied Michael. The quiet life didn't last long. 2 weeks later, 2 men in civilian clothes came for him. A police officer and an unfamiliar investigator from the city. Michael's eyes ran helplessly, as if looking for salvation. But there was nowhere to hide. "Hello, Captain Justice Benjamin from the maternity ward. Well, tell us about yourself, hero. What is there to tell? You know everything. We know everything, but not everything. Who you really are is a fugitive criminal, Michael." Article 264. Camille gasped, till she woke up. She slumped to the floor and was as still as if she hadn't lived. Michael jumped up to his wife, screamed as loud as he could, yelling for an ambulance. He never got the chance that day. Michael was taken away to say goodbye to his wife, a fugitive. A new trial and a new sentence were looming. The man shouldered the salty jacket in which he had returned from his escape. He thought bitterly that he had run away for nothing. Now anyone could accuse his family of being related to a criminal. His son would get in trouble at work. Besides, Ethan didn't repent at all, as if he didn't bring trouble to the family. What kind of man has he raised? He had no remorse or conscience. It was bitter to realize that an unworthy man had grown up. What was going to happen that would change Ethan? It was hard to think about it, to accept the bleak canvas of hopelessness, glimpsed in the future of unbroken tunnels. Camille came to when Michael had already been taken away. She opened her eyes to see a white cloth of medical gowns in front of her. "Camille, get ready for the hospital," one of the attendants said insistently, in a high-pitched voice almost to you. "No, I don't need to. It's all right now. I'll leave on my own. I'm lying down. You're refusing hospitalization. And for nothing. Pressure attacks long ago you tired," insisted the doctor, wiping drops of sweat from her forehead. "There was nothing. It's from excitement. Grief in my family is barely audible," whispered the hostess, huffed, looking at the uninvited guests. "Sign here," slipped her a piece of paper, poking her finger into the edge and remembering the pen. Soon silence reigned in the house of sickness. Our hearts clenched, a buzzing in her head as if she hadn't slept. For days the world blurred with hopelessness. She wondered what she would say to her son when he returned. She felt sorry for both herself and Michael. Why such an incomprehensible and cruel fate? She dreamed so much to live near her husband, to take care of him, to create a family together. But here, they were next to each other, and happiness bypasses them. Some people and events constantly radiate them. Camille wiped her tears, went out into the yard, and looked around. A light fog rolled through the village. The morning was gloomy, as if the earth had frozen in a heavy, foreboding sense of something terrible. Camille walked along the road under an old lime tree. "When I live," I asked myself, "I'll die alone, without warmth or affection." Walk around the yard. Harsh Camille a little shook curly short hair and thought already more firmly, a little withdrawn from the first shock. "All misfortunes come to an end one day, and so will my misfortunes. If only Michael would bear it, explain himself, write me a letter." What really happened? She had little faith in his watchwork. Even when he told her not to wait for him, to live her own life. How blind she'd been, not asking about her husband, not looking for him, as if in a fog. All those years she lived with her son first after his father disappeared. He shut down. He didn't say anything to his mother and left the house for long periods of time. 6 months later, silence. The son began to move away from his painful state, caused, as it seemed to the mother, by the fact that the father abandoned them. And then everything got better. In an instant, The boy came to life, enrolled in a technical school, became an engineer, and got a good place in the city. All this time, Ethan refused to speak or remember his father. Did he really know? The mother grievingly pondered over her son, determined to speak to him frankly when she arrived. But Ethan did not return that day, nor did he come home for the next week, until Camille herself went to see him at work in the city. Matusha turned softly. She to him, "I'm not going to say anything. I won't ask you anything. You'll share it with me as soon as you can, and come home. It's not the same without a man in the house. No one to help. My father's gone. It's not like I rented a place in town. It's easier for me. But if you need help at home, I'll come. But I don't want to deal with a family of criminals. If they find out at work, they'll kick me out. How can you?" My mother exclaimed in amazement and shook her head reproachfully. Anything could have happened. Without knowing, how can you accuse a person? He may not be guilty of anything. It's just the way things are. In any case, stay. Does it hurt me that you've turned your back on your family? The son didn't say anything. Something subtly bitter flashed in his eyes. He rose abruptly and ran away from his mother. Camille sighed heavily and started on her way back. When she got back to the village, she walked along the path thoughtfully and did not notice where the police officer William suddenly appeared in front of her. He sat down on his motorcycle, looked down at Camille, and said, "You may not go down that road again. Soon everyone will know that you are the wife of a criminal. I'll tell the people all about you. Just think of the times we live in. Anything can happen. Ethan, we don't know if he's guilty yet. How could he not be guilty? He killed a young mother to death. Drunken beater almost ran over a baby. I checked with the investigator. Your husband left like that. Left a woman to die. Couldn't you have saved her? You better run." "Camille, I won't stand for it. 5 years a widower's been looking for your fucking family. To get rid of you. You're unlucky. The man's a tough one. He's gonna avenge his wife. He's gonna kill you or your little boy. William, did you know how to do that? What do you look like? Think about it. What's the use of rehashing the past? If Michael was guilty, now he's punished to the fullest." Bitter, Camille shouted, almost hysterically. Her body trembled with anger, her heart pounded implacably. Having learned the terrible truth, the wife did not doubt her husband's innocence for a moment. He never drank. He drove carefully. He had never been in an accident in many years. All these thoughts ran through the poor woman's mind, but her eyes glittered furiously. "There's no redeeming what Michael did. One word from me, and you'll be gone. I didn't know what you were really like. You ran from your wife to me. And when I kicked you out, you became my enemy. Is that what revenge means? If you want to take revenge on me, then live in your house until you die for your sins. Don't say a word. Don't scare me with my sins. Think of your own. You won't be here much longer. Drive on by, smart ass. We'll see who outlives who." Camille proudly walked around and hurried to her house, but she realized from the last phrase the policeman had said that she would be found soon. She had to leave. It was necessary to prepare, to collect everything necessary for herself and her son, which would come in handy on the long journey. Christina greeted her sister grudgingly. "So where are you? All the work is standing by." "What work, Christina? We're so grief-stricken. I'd better go to the Oscars." Camille shared the latest developments. They sat on a bench outside the house. They consoled each other as best they could and decided to go as far into the unknown as possible, on the condition that Christina stayed behind. It was worth it, Camille, but could Ethan be persuaded to go with them? Camille was even more worried about his fate now. Her gut told her that her son was involved in his father's business, but he was hiding it from his mother and would not share it. "To avoid getting in trouble with me, you can temporarily move in with your family. Christina Smith said we might get revenge, and he'll let us know where we live. Why are you listening to this blabbermouth? All he does is talk." "I'm a criminal's wife," Camille mumbled sadly. And that says it all. Is it really true? I can't believe what I'm hearing, Christina asked. We have to be ready for anything. You see, we're newcomers, even though we've been living here for a long time, not even registered. We could be evicted. I'm used to you. How can I be alone now? Maybe I'll ask my brother to stay with me for a while. I don't know. Why don't you go talk to him? That's my sister. Poor us. Christina exclaimed and hugged Camille. No happiness for us. They sat and cried. I could feel the uncertainty, confusion and fear floating away with their tears. Camille got up from the bench first and quietly said, "Stop crying. We have to live. We have to work. You and I, Christina, will survive all our enemies. We've done them no harm." Camille and Ethan rode into the unknown. The son exercised until he feared retribution, determined to move for his own safety. And so the family left their settled home and farm. They traveled by freight car, having agreed with the driver so that their trail would be lost, cut off. They did not even take tickets. Camille found a seat near a high window, threw her things on the floor, comforted her son. Don't be afraid of anything. People live everywhere. I don't mind. I'm even interested, Ethan answered, quietly rejoicing that he would no longer see his hated boss, would no longer go to work and perform routine tasks. Where are we going? I don't know. Son, you can look where there are shifts. You will find your specialty everywhere, and I can be a janitor, and we can come back. It'll be a while. Ethan kept watching the fields and forests outside the window. For the first time, he heard the names of stations and towns, and they kept driving forward as the towns and scenery changed. Having hastily looked through the list of vacancies, they even contacted the employer. They got the go-ahead, so they decided to find at the nearest station to change to Lazarev, where they promised work and lodging. On hitchhiking cars, we have already reached the village, where people lived in small houses. One of them was given to Camille Ethan. The boy frowned as he looked at the wilderness they had been forced into by fate. Nearby stretched a canal of green, undrinkable water. Along it grew steep trees, probably poplars. I was comforted by the fact that in this godforsaken settlement, there were workers from different parts of the country, friendly, helpful, and people ready to help the newcomers. These people willingly told a little about their lives, about how hard they managed to adapt. This is where we are going to live, Camille said, looking around at the accommodation they had been given. How long do we have to put up with this? Ethan was indignant. He was ready to go back. But then he'd have to betray his mother. Our father's still got about 7 years left on his sentence. I got the address on my last date with him before he left. He wasn't much of a talker himself. Didn't even want to meet. 7 years, my son asked in surprise. His whole body shuddered, his face affirmed, as if it had become a fireplace. So he and I are doing time together. What are you saying, son? Maybe they'll release us sooner. Then we can come back sooner. Ethan was quickly put to work. The work was not dusty. They didn't ask for much. The pay was 5 times higher than his old job. The guy was excited and decided to earn money for an apartment, move closer to the sea, and then live in his own pleasure. Camille also started working. The woman did not refuse to do anything. She was used to hard work, but the move and the climate affected her health. One day she felt a pain in her neck, and when she felt a small band, which grew 3 days later. A fever rose. Camille was frightened. What if something happened to her? How would her son be left alone? Who would look after him and care for him? A local doctor was called in. A man with a pleasant face and a soft voice, not yet old, black hair, came in and examined the patient and said that it was carbonic anemia, most likely caused by the change of climate. He applied some ointment either for it or for simple human attention. Camille felt better. She almost cried. For the first time she felt cared for. This handsome, manly man had stirred her hitherto dormant heart. Here's the thing. Camille, don't worry, said the doctor. I'll cure you of this ailment. I've had to deal with other illnesses, and I'll make sure you don't do any more hard work. What am I supposed to do? You're gonna clean my office. I'll get you a job as a nurse. It's not much, but it's still a good salary. Thank you very much, Liam. Feel better. I'll come back tomorrow to check on you. The doctor visited Camille for a week, until the tumor finally went away. I'll give you 3 more days to recover, and you'll start your new job on Monday. You and I will have plenty. Thank you, Liam. You brought me back from the dead. You're welcome. It's my duty. I met your son. He's a wonderful boy, well-mannered. I think we'll be friends. He's different. Sometimes, you see, he grows up without a father. Where's the father sitting? He lowered his eyes in shame. Camille, and then she added, I've written to him, but we haven't heard from him. I hope he's alive. What's he in for? The doctor asked. Then he realized, it's none of my business. Camille sighed softly and said, poor people suffer for no reason. It's not his fault, but he's hiding something. He took it all on himself. In these moments, she was still pushing away from herself the terrible thoughts concerning the truth of that hit and run. But in her mind, there were still images of insight, of the true state of affairs. I look forward to seeing you at work, Liam went out. And Camille thought happily that the world was not without good people, but that they would get by in the middle of nowhere. The time would come, they'd come home, even if they had to live here for a few years. The woman remembered her garden, orphaned and home, and cried quietly with longing and sadness. Camille went to work until lunchtime washing. She cleaned the floors of Dr. Silverstav's office, and then in the evening, she washed medical dishes, sterilized it one day on New Year's Eve. The doctor was late at work, sat writing at his desk and prevented Camille, who was in a hurry to get home, because she wanted to celebrate the holiday with her son and cook him something tasty for dinner. What is it, Liam, that you've earned so much? All the people are getting ready to celebrate, and you haven't gotten off work. It's nice to be with you, Camille. I don't want to go home. Let's celebrate New Year's Eve together. The man suddenly proposed and looked intently into the eyes of the former woman. I have some wine here. I have some candy, and a melon I bought at the market when I went downtown. The doctor took a bottle of wine out of the cupboard and invited Camille. Put your rags aside. Sit down at the table. The woman wiped her hands while stroking her curly hair and quietly sat down to the table. The man kept looking at the guest with tenderness, filled a glass with wine. Put it down. Let's drink to the new year, my dear. May it bring us happiness, good health, and all the best in our lives. May it be so. Bless you, Liam. I answered. Raised the glasses. We clinked glasses. You're just a heroic woman. Suddenly, a man confessed. And very beautiful. What are you saying? I'm the wife of a criminal. Such a stigma, which will not be washed away for the rest of my life. The woman said sadly, sighing bitterly, Good hostess, I can see that everything burns in your hands. I liked you from the first time I met you. The time for confessions had begun. Camille knew it would be soon. She could barely keep her heart from going into her chest. I don't even know how to thank you for everything, Camille said. You don't have to do anything. People should help each other. I've been wanting to talk to you about an important topic for a long time. I don't know how to begin. The woman looked boldly at the doctor and said with a sincere smile, Finish, don't be shy. I am a simple woman, I will understand everything. The doctor was silent. Then he took out of his pocket a pack of MP smoked, hiding his eyes behind a cloud of smoke, and quietly said to us, Camille, You'll have to live here for a long time. My wife divorced me and left, and your husband is nowhere to be found. I would be happy if we could be together and walk side by side through life. Camille sighed, and her face blushed. She tousled her unruly hair and said in a trembling voice, Liam, darling, anything but that. I'll never cheat on my husband as long as he's alive, and he is. I will wait for him always. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it's my bitter truth. He's the only one I love. All right, that's enough. "I understand," said the doctor sorrowfully. Camille jumped out from behind the desk, threw her coat over her shoulders. The man didn't let her go so easily. He jumped up next, tugged her hand, and nestled it against his lips. And the women? A voluptuous wave, like a poison, swept over her passion, to plunge headlong into the tenderness this handsome and determined man was showing her. The woman wanted to give up, but managed to overcome her feelings. "I'll go, I'm sorry." "Wait, take a melon. Give it to your son as a gift from me." The doctor did not look at it, studied the gift, and turned away with annoyance. "I apologize if anything is wrong. Happy New Year." The doctor bent down again to kiss Camille, but she jumped out of the door, frightened. She liked the man very much, and her soul was drawn to him. But Ethan was waiting at home, complaining daily about the lack of life in this hell. Camille stepped off the porch, saw the black sky above her, rare stars, but hurried home. Her son met her grudgingly. "What took you so long today?" "It's the end of the year. I had to clean up properly. I've prepared the table. Come on, let's celebrate." "The doctor gave you a melon. Where did he get it in the middle of winter?" "Is there such a thing?" Ethan smelled the melon with pleasure. "How was the party at work?" "It was fun," his mother asked, remembering that the workers wanted to have a corporate party. "What kind of fun?" "No girls, hardly any. The workers jumped to the balalaika. That's all. But now it'll be the weekend. You'll have a rest," Camille said, thinking about Seliverstova, how she would now work with him, and how to behave in general to pretend that nothing had happened. A day later she came to work, noticed that the doctor sadly meets her gaze. "I feel awkward. I'll have to change jobs," Camille thought. "I'm so used to it. I'll have to do something about this place. It would be nice to get out of here altogether." The days were quiet but dreary. Liam pestered Camille, not letting her breathe. The woman felt she would give up just a little more. But a month later she received a letter from Michael. He said he was working at the mine, but he'd fallen ill. He is now undergoing treatment. The letter was short but warm. Michael was waiting to meet his wife. Said he loved the man, never broken by prison. The event stirred. It gave Camille the strength to wait for Michael's return. But she had to move now so her paths would never cross again. The neighborhood center found her a job bagging cotton. She rented an apartment. There was room for Ethan, who had moved to a higher position. A new life began for the boy. He liked it better in the center, as there were no entertainment in the village, and here there was civilization. Cinemas, swimming pool, gym, and other joys of the modern world. The boy made a lot of friends. He was rarely at home. At that time, his father pulled the burden of prison life instead of his son. Work in the mine, where Michael was imprisoned, was hard and dangerous. With poor nutrition took a lot of energy. The man tried not to think about the fact that he would have to live like that for another 7 years, for which he was sentenced. From time to time there were accidents, flooding, methane explosions, and people died in the mines. No one tried to save the prisoners. The only lucky thing was that there were freelancers working nearby who treated people with understanding and humanity, even though they knew they were criminals. The workers shared bread and hot tea from thermoses. Michael bitterly realized the wrongness of this life. The native son never repented. Moreover, he cut his father out of his life, while strangers showed him sympathy. What was there to live for? The strength was leaving the man, who was losing interest in his existence. Sometimes the man returned with thoughts to this world to cheer himself up. He thought that it was not by chance that he had been given this trial. Diseases did not take him for a long time. However, the daily breathing of coal dust for 2 years still had a bad effect on his health. Michael developed a dark spot on his lungs. The disease began with a strong cough and high fever, so he was put in the hospital. While they examined and treated him, Michael, in his spare time, took up the notes he had been writing in his head for a long time. However, they were just diary notes. He wanted his manuscript to live on, and his son read these notes and understood everything. In the ward where Michael was assigned, there were other patients who distracted him with complimentary conversations. Someone tugged on the man's shoulder. He flinched in surprise, turned his head, saw the faded eyes of one of the TB patients. "Let's go play cards, clerk." "I can't. I don't feel well." Another time waved away Michael, dissatisfied that interrupted his musings. "What are you writing?" "It's calling." "But write." "We won't be here long," replied the coughing patient. "Why are you throwing your germs around?" The man was indignant. At the voice, a nurse came running in to stop the outburst. Everyone is having a hard time as it is. Setting aside her paycheck, Camille collected help and sent the money to her husband for treatment. Thanks to the help, he bought himself a warm place in the office. He was able to transfer to a lighter job in a building instead of a mine. From time to time, he carried gifts to the doctors, and they put him in the hospital and treated him as best they could with the medicine they had on hand. Had there ever been sick people in Hippolyte's ward and pause? Michael gazed up at the starry sky through the thick glass on which droplets of moisture crawled. The realization of his son's meanness once again weighed heavily on his soul. The man leaned back tiredly on the pillow. He felt that it became difficult to breathe. His heart ached. He lay for a few minutes, waiting for relief. The pain in his heart was growing. He thought that he should ask the nurse for some valerian, though he was still afraid that they would not give him some poison. However, he got up and quietly, so as not to wake up any of the patients, went out into the corridor, where there was more clean air. After 3 years, Michael was released. He immediately decided to go to his wife and son, whom he had not seen for almost 10 years. The long road stretched in time for almost a week, and the desire seemed to be the meeting. He decided to forget forever what he had to endure in prison. He rode in silence, glancing sternly at his fellow travelers. No one wanted to tell about his sufferings. I believe that they had faded into oblivion. Fear, camp, death. People in detention died of hunger. Cold was forced to endure suffering, humiliation, abuse. The pain he experienced had to be thrown out of his memory and soul. Otherwise, as he realized, it would be impossible to live further with an exorbitant resentment against himself, his relatives, and friends. Forget. The wheels of the train were knocking when the boundless steps spread out behind the car window more than once and warmly. Michael joyfully thought that soon he would see his relatives, and it would be his reward for long suffering and patience. He believed that his son had not only grown up, but also strengthened his soul. That means that he would accept his father and repent of his deed. The small town where Camille and Ethan lived was not far from the station. I drove to it. Michael easily found the right street and house from the address. He knocked on the door. A tall, bearded man with clear eyes opened the door. Am I in the right place? His father didn't recognize this man as his son. I'm looking for Camille. Does she live here? It's my mother, the man said, confused and resentful. So you, Ethan, are my son? The guest exclaimed in surprise, looking into the stranger's face. I am Ethan. So you are, father. But you don't come to me with nonsense. I don't want no prisoner for a father, and don't you dare say anything to your mother. I'll pretend for her sake that I'm glad you're back. You should be flogged. Parasites, such ungrateful in his heart. His father suddenly hissed. His eyebrows moved menacingly and glanced from Papeliev, about to give his great-aged son a thrashing. But he didn't have time. Footsteps were heard. A woman with a tired face came out to the noise. She said hello, looking intently into the face of her guest. So did he. And suddenly, Michael. Through the fine wrinkles and shadows loomed the forgotten face of Camille. The man rushed toward her, stepped forward. She recognized him at last, and with a surprised cry, Michael returned. She fell against his chest. He put his arms around her and stroked her head. Camille shuddered. Stop it. Why are you crying? It's all right, her husband said. You're breathing so hard. What's wrong with your lungs? Concerned, she asked. It's a legacy from working in the mine. But I have not had tuberculosis. Don't worry, it's not contagious. How did you get there? Why didn't you write? We would have met you. I wasn't at the resort. Camille didn't stay there with me. As soon as they let me out, I ran to you. I felt like it would never end either. I didn't want to die there, and it was unbearable to live. Camille looked into her husband's face and said, "Thank God we're together. I feel like you've been through a lot too, but you did a good job raising such a son." I didn't recognize him. I thought I'd made a mistake. Wrong place. Michael hugged his family. The son still held himself apart only for his mother's sake, and he did. But in Ethan's chest had long been pushing, drowning out my sense of conscience. He was ashamed of his criminal father, but he could not forget the day when he committed the crime. He was the one who was supposed to do the time. And then his father stepped in. Nobody asked him to be a hero. The son would have gotten away with it, run, but he wouldn't have done time. Why did the father get so excited? He took such a burden on himself. He should bear the cross himself. And he just lived, suffered in a foreign land with his mother. All because of his criminal father. The son couldn't stand it any longer and left the yard. Michael and Camille sat on a bench and sat for a long time remembering something from that long ago past, when the son was still very young and did not remember much. It was good and light for them to sit together and feel that there was something very important in this life that united them, despite any obstacles. After they entered a pleasant dwelling, well furnished, clean and clean, plenty of food. The furniture is new. Sit closer to the table. Maybe you want to eat. The wife fussed with care. I don't want to eat, but I'd like some water. With love and gratitude, replied the man, still not believing in his return to the fact that the hard years were behind him. Tell me, how did you live here? Yes, everything is fine. We work slowly. Camille went to work every day. My son was in the service too. He hardly ever came home. A terrible secret. It was weighing him down. The father irritated with his frightening appearance of a man who had been sitting for many years. For the first time in many years, Michael had enough free time to finally put his notes in order. After painstaking labor, sent the manuscripts to the editor. His only copy, without letting his son read the story. From the editorial office came a polite reply thanking him for his labor and asking him to wait a little longer. With the release of the book, Michael realized that no one took his work seriously. Dreams that he could become a recognizable writer crumbled. It was replaced by a bitter realization. No one wants it yet. Great disappointment gripped his soul. Michael lamented his fate and became angry with his son, became silent and irritable. Over time, his health deteriorated. The man went to bed outside in the open air. It was hard for him to breathe. His heart was pounding, almost flying out of his chest. The doctors said the climate wasn't suitable. However, the family had no intention of staying here any longer. Ethan's contract could be terminated at any time. As soon as the son finished the third term of the contract, they decided to return to their native village. True, Camille did not immediately agree, as I imagined that Midrozhkn and his nasty daughter Maria, who gave us no life. I don't want to think about Karachevo. She spoke anxiously. Let's stay in the Far East, such a beautiful city. Not Camille. My health is weak. I want to die. I'm at home among strangers. I want to retire to my native land. Objected Michael. You will live without thinking of death, asked the wife. I've been wanting to go back for a long time, said the son. When did you come to an agreement? Camille was surprised. The first day you came back. It was clear right away. I don't belong here. Again, Camille was on the road, buying and selling things. Michael was packing and getting the luggage ready to go. Ethan was gone all day. Somewhere on the street, he was saying goodbye to his friends in the service. A girl Ethan was friends with wanted to study to be an actress, dreamed of going to Moscow. She called him to come with her. The man was still ashamed of his father's dark past. The truth about him and his family might come out. It would be embarrassing. Let's do this, he told the girl. If you go to school, I will come to you in Moscow. Find a job. and help you in any way I can. If you don't get in, you will come to me in Karachi, and there together we will decide how to live on. It's a deal." The girl agreed easily and put her hot arms around Ogai's neck. A week later, she came to see Ethan off at the train station. In the presence of his parents, the guy felt constrained. He only stared intently at the girl, trying to remember her as beautiful as she was now. When his mother called, he retreated a few steps, stopped, waved, and jumped into the car. Then how long was the ride? No matter what Ethan did looking out the window or lying down with his eyes closed, he saw only a girl with blonde straight hair in front of him because of the separation from his beloved. The meeting with his native village was not as joyful as he had dreamed and imagined. The old station building looked the same as before. The same tall trees welcomed green branches under the hot wind. Sparrows flew down in flocks and landed on the platform. To the returning family, it seemed as if they were back in the old days, and when they looked, they noticed that they didn't see a single familiar face. Michael went to the station square, saw a young cab driver, asked him how much he would charge. He replied that the ride was not expensive. They drove in silence, looking at the surroundings, and did not recognize the former places. New trees had grown, disappeared, and the fields were overgrown with weeds. The cab driver tried to speak, asked who they were, where were they from. Michael evasively explained that they were traveling for work. But, as they say, well, only where we are not. That's why they come back to their homeland. Now many people are looking for easy money. They go far away. The guy answered. That was the end of the speech of the car about the body by blood. Turning onto a field road, which quickly led to a small forest, opened Shorter Cow. Michael, with excitement, immediately noticed 3 new buildings nearby. He easily recognized the other houses, mentioned the owners, looked into the yards where someone's children and grandchildren were huddled. Life went on as usual. Maybe only now the man realized the tragic nature of human life. At the end of the village, they asked the cab driver to stop, thanked him, and walked to their house. They looked closely at the trees, sighed at the native odors. They wanted to see their farm as soon as possible. How come? The house is long gone. All that's left is daycare. Bitter, Camille exclaimed. The family stopped at the yard, which was nothing but a pile of stone. Ethan struggled to keep from snapping and yelling at his parents. He wanted to go to the city as soon as possible, rent an apartment, and live a normal life, without shame or fear of anyone. Everything's gone. What kind of people? Angrily, Camille said. Did you think you had a palace waiting for you here? Overcast, smiled Michael. At least they left the stove. Everyone needs a stove. How can you be so calm? I'm happy to be alive and free. Will we build a new house? Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to them. I see the criminals have returned to them. William came. Well, you tore down the house, and now you've come to rejoice in our misfortune. I'm on the offensive. Camille, you're wrong to attack me. People thought you were gone for good, so they took everything of value. William started making excuses. There's nothing to be sorry about. Your old house was worthless, and then that little man came along whose wife your father had killed. Ethan shuddered and turned away. So he and his men used it for firewood. Buy a log, and I'll help you build a new house. Wow. Camille dismissively threw the figure of the aged district officer and asked, why are you from the bosses to the builders? I've been in simple ones for a long time. Young, literate people came to replace us, and we have done our time, served the fatherland. How is your family? Michael asked. No, I've already buried my wife. She was in the hospital for a month, and then the doctors said to take her away. Let her stay at home. They prescribed some pills, and she drank them, and one day she didn't wake up. Easy death. In the coffin, she was lying so beautiful, so calm. I couldn't even believe she wasn't alive. Left alone with his daughter. Smith stepped with his nose. People are leaving. Michael said quietly. Where are we going to put the new house? Camille asked. We'll put it here, said the man. Maybe we shouldn't. This place is unhappy from the beginning. The wife hesitated. We made him happy. Orphaned, the family stopped, looked back at the ruined yard, and each of them imagined the future house in his own way. But for some reason, they each saw the one that had stood here before, so familiar and native. Only their Ethan wrinkled his nose. Everyone wanted to get to the city, away from their parents. Michael looked into the well. Glimpses of oxen, water black as oil. Our well is blocked. With a grudge, he said, we'll clean it up. Camille replied calmly. The Mansfields moved toward their brother's house. He was sitting on a bench, interested, watching the people who were approaching him and did not recognize him at once. Only when Camille said hello. The brother got up joyfully and began to hug and kiss his relatives. Look at me, Camille. I have become so faded in voice, he said, and tears kept running from his eyes. It's disgusting to look at myself in the mirror. What's the matter? As long as your soul is young, my sister said. I'm not young either. Over the years, my husband didn't even recognize me right away. You're here for good. There's no home. You'll live here for now. Let's go inside. I'll buy you something God sent. The guests had just sat down to eat. An excited Christina came running in, hugging her sister, crying and laughing, wiping her tears and saying, "You're back. How many nights have I not slept? How long have I thought about you? Enough. That's enough. Calm down." Camille stopped her with a smile. Christina stepped back and turned to her nephew. "My God, who is that man?" "Ethan, is that you?" "Me? Who else?" Barefoot replied the boy. That's how the Cavalier grew up. There was no limit to the peasant's joy. She immediately began to tell about the village news. After a little while, a message came from the girl Ethan that she had entered the Theater Institute. But Ethan never went to see her in Moscow. Instead, he took a new job in the city at a security agency, settled in a hostel in the service. He wanted to save money for a trouble-free life in the capital. Now the money he had saved up was not even enough to buy an apartment. The boy quickly learned a new profession, and he even liked it. After all, he dreamed, like every boy, to protect from trouble, guard, and even save people. In the first few months, he wrote the name Anna on his shoulder, then immortalized his beloved, who was always with him now. Soon the guy was promoted, appointing him deputy head of the security service. Soon the unexpected happened. Anna sent a long message thanking him for his understanding and longtime friendship, but informing him that she had met a great and true love. She wrote that she had married a good man and was happy that she could. Unites not only love, but also a common cause. Plus bragged that she had already been invited to a movie shoot. Ethan read the message and realized that he had lost it forever. Life had lost its meaning. A new blow struck the unhappy man like a punishment from heaven. A sin committed in advance. What was he to labor for now? Work? No life. Ahead instead of the future is darkness, where there is no love and never will be, and no pity for his father. What kind of monster is he? Because of him, his own man spent more than 10 years in prison. He sacrificed himself. And who is he? He's nothing. For 24 hours, Ethan lay on his bed facing the wall, clenching his teeth to keep from screaming with hatred and powerlessness. At night, he tried to sleep, but the voices in his subconscious woke him up and kept him awake. Daddy's daddy ran him over. In the morning, the boss called, ordered to report to work in a severe psychological disorder. The man entered the office to the management, sat down with his head down on the table, and go to work. "Hear you what the resort ordered." "I cannot," replied Ethan. "What can be sick, so go to the hospital." "My soul hurts," quietly answered the guy. From grief, he lost his strength and could not move. In fact, it turned out that it was better to die. They keep the mentally ill in the nut house. Go to work. The boss jumped up to your subordinate and slapped him on the cheek. Ethan suddenly looked into the eyes of his interlocutor with hatred, suddenly jumped up from his chair, grabbed a clerical knife from the table. Polos kicked himself in the stomach. Blood in a narrow strip marked the wound, and began to drip to the floor. The boss turned pale and screamed in a frenzy. Ethan slumped helplessly to the floor and closed his eyes. He felt neither pain nor fear, and a moment later he lost consciousness and did not hear how he was carried on a stretcher to the car, how the surgery was done, how he was placed in the intensive care unit. He woke up in the evening, saw a man in a white coat above him, and asked, "Why am I here?" "Did you have surgery?" The doctor answered. "Surgery?" Ethan asked again. "And only now I remember everything. How do you feel? What hurts?" "Nothing." "What about me?" "Cut my skin. Did a little damage to my intestines, but thank God I was hungry this morning. So there were no complications. It could have been really bad. Think about it. What do you value more than your own life, or some unpleasantness that threw you off balance?" "I will. Only I can't beg for your forgiveness now. I'm a worthless man. I don't deserve to live. Just lie still for now. I've got 12 stitches. Make sure they don't come apart, or we'll have to sew them up again. Just don't tell your relatives," the man asked. The doctor left. Ethan tried to turn on his side and felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. He tried to feel his stomach. It appeared to be all renamed. Again, the resentment against himself came from far away. Thoughts of Anna shifted somewhere in the background. He shoved it away. He raised his hand to nail his hair. The movement echoed with pain. He regretted now that he had been so intemperate and had almost destroyed himself because of some woman and a foolish impulse. His father had given half his life for him, and he'd almost wiped out those efforts in one fell swoop. He had no right. He's the only one his parents have. How could they be without him? The thought of his family finally touched the callus, as it had seemed to the boy before. He brushed away the tears sternly and firmly decided to live near his mother and father, to help them at the construction site, as long as they were alive, as long as it was possible to please them with their presence. 4 days later, Ethan was transferred to a ward, and after a couple of weeks he was discharged. He suddenly returned to Karachevo. On the threshold he stood with his head down and tried his strength. "Batya, let's go. We need to talk." Michael looked sternly at his son, realizing in advance that the latter had realized everything. "Father, I'm sorry. I don't know when you'll be able to forgive me. I have no right to forgive you. Your forgiveness will be yours, son. It's all behind us now. If we can't change anything, there's no point in rehashing the past. Thank you, Dad. I didn't deserve that sacrifice. Things will be different now." His father turned away, a man's tear running down his cheek. Behind him, pain, beatings, a dark past in custody, all for the sake of his favorite son. But the boy lived freely. That's the main thing. First thing the mom noticed was the tattoo. She got really worried. Why would he do that to that girl? What's he gonna do to himself for her? Michael's reaction to that was very restrained. "Who cares about us?" the husband replied calmly. "You'd better ask why the son came back from the city early." "Why the son?" Ethan smiled strangely and replied cheerfully, "I'm fed up with everything there. I want to take care of my parents. Everything I've saved up. Let's spend it on a new house, a 2-story one." Camille was suspicious and asked insistently if you were joking, son. "Did something happen?" "Nothing happened. I had an operation. You can't work after that." "What surgery?" "Worried?" asked Michael. "And I know they cut something out there." "Show me," the mother said. Ethan, sighing, pulled up his shirt and showed the red scar on his stomach. The parents stared at Ethan stunned. "Oh, my little son," cried the mother. "They gave me anesthesia. Nothing hurt me. Look, how much can you eat? I'm hungry. Or are you going to starve me? The kid's sick for fun." "I'll be right back," answered the mother and fussed at the stove. They smelled familiar dishes. Ethan felt happy and free for the first time in a long time. The weight of guilt had been pinning the lice to the ground for almost 15 years. Slowly it dissolved. We can start a new life. In the evening, women's voices were heard outside the window. Some were singing, laughing. Camille pulled back the curtain, looked outside, but saw nothing. The girls were already sniffing. "That a beau has appeared in the village," muttered the mother. "Now I'll go and disperse everyone, not travelers." Angrily, she said, "Hide him under your skirt. The kid's too old," noted Michael. Ethan, meanwhile, without a word about the family, slipped out the door. He returned in the morning. Camille was beginning to resent him for sneaking around and keeping her parents up all night. The husband stopped it. "Let the boy live. He's not a little boy anymore." Ethan smiled warmly. His father sipped his milk, climbed onto the couch, and a moment later his steady breathing was heard. Camille was working in the yard and thinking about her son. It would be good for him to continue working in a new place. They could take care of the house. Maybe they should go to the apartment, but the thought of living within four walls now dragged the woman. She got used to life in the village and did not want to return to the city. But she did not want her son to be pulled into the hard village life. What was the point of working without a salary? To live on the farm when you have a profession. Michael soon got a job as a watchman. Camille, too, was thinking of going to work the way one should go to build one's house. The son, too, was looking for work in town, especially since it's only about 15 kilometers away. If he got a good position, he could buy an apartment. It was time to start a family. Now Camille dreamed of waiting for grandchildren. She didn't rush her son to take over. She wanted him to rest, to gain strength. How much hard work had he endured? Busy with her thoughts, she did not notice Christina entering the courtyard. She sat on a bench, put her hands on her hem and said, "You work hard, and you don't know what your son is doing." "Why?" Surprise raised his eyes. Camille glared at William. "And met, that's what." "How do you know?" "The whole village is buzzing. Sophia is bragging that Ethan has promised to marry her. And that's all the unhappiness we need." The mother clapped her hands together and looked anxiously toward the palace, where father and son were sawing wood. "I'll show him, Sophia. Anything you don't pile on the lad unawares," stopped Camille. Christina, knowing how hot she was, to talk to him quietly, affectionately, in a motherly way. "Explain what's going on. Tell me how you've been leaning in for over 10 years. I'll give that girl a drink if she doesn't give up on the guys," shouted Camille, who couldn't contain her anger. Maybe on purpose so her son could hear. "You're so stubborn. No matter what you're told, you do it your way." Michael spotted his sister in the yard, left work, came over, said hello, asked her how she was doing. "You know how to live. Don't have your own house. Don't get upset." "Sister, I'll build a house. I'll take you in while you build a house." "It's like that," said Christina. Ethan was chopping wood. Camille looked in his direction and said, "Michael, hear what our son has done. Sophia Sam has been visiting. Christina says that the whole village knows about it." "When did he have time?" the husband said calmly. "It's gossip. Ask him yourself." "All right, I'll ask him," Michael agreed. Christina adjusted the handkerchief on her head. "It's hard." "Oh," got up from the bench. "But I'll go. I'll take care of it myself," she said. Camille invited Camille to join us. "Thank you. I'll go. I'm walking slowly now, until I get home. That's how I'm going to have dinner." How sly. Camille thought of Christina. Doesn't want to mess things up with her nephew. Everyone wants to be nice, but Sophia's a viper too. Michael can't be lured. She wants his son so badly. It won't work. The gate slammed behind Christina. "What do you want?" "Like a mouse on grits?" Michael asked, thinking about what to do. "Do nothing. Or is he stupid to get married so soon?" "Not into you. He's a success." "Maybe because I raised him myself. He only looks like you. He didn't have a father around. Who should I look up to?" "I'd like to talk to him now, because I've lost it. I hate that girl, you know." After lunch, Michael deliberately waited until Camille went inside and started talking to his son. "What are you going to do next?" "I'm going to look for a job. I think I might stay here." "We're here." Surprised father. It's almost free to go to work and have nothing from it. That's how people live. Only idlers live like that. Maybe you've already decided to get married." Ethan smiled and answered, "I think I'll have to get married at some point." "Is it really with her?" "Why?" "She's a pretty girl," the son said, happy to hear what he hadn't dared to tell his parents yet. "You know how many such pretty there are in the world, 1,000,000, and you need to choose one, which you will love all your life unsatisfied," said the father. "I'll get married. I'll have one. Why put a clamp around your neck so early? You still have your whole life ahead of you." At that time, Camille entered the house and said indignantly, "Don't you remember, Ethan, how we were almost killed because of Verka's father?" "Children are not responsible for their parents," Ethan objected. "What's the matter with you two? Sophia wanted us dead too. Are you ready to warm a snake on your chest?" Camille shouted in a huff. Ethan looked at his mother's face in confusion. He rushed to the door, grabbed his jacket, and sprinted out of the house. Just as mad and stubborn as you said, watching out the window for his son Michael. "Where did he run to?" Camille asked anxiously. "Don't worry, he won't go drowning. Like you did when you were young." "What have I done? When will he come back?" "I'll go crazy if he's gone for a long time." "Calm down. Let the boy think about what we told him. It might be good for him." The husband comforted his wife. "What's going on in there?" asked the brother who entered the yard. "Nothing a little." She yelled at her son. "Did he take offense?" replied Michael. Ethan returned to his parents. 2 days later said he got a job as an engineer in a construction organization in the city. He was temporarily living in a hostel. Camille was overjoyed. She asked, "What you, my son, will do there?" "I'll be a senior wherever they send me. I have to justify my profession." My father was happy. "The main thing is that they gave you dormitories. I'll help you build a house. I'll buy the apartment myself." The son looked at his watch and warned, "I've come to get my things." Camille calmly thought that he would probably give up Verka if he suddenly changed his plans so abruptly. "God forbid you should be related to that family. You should at least visit us," your mother asked, "and leave an address so I know where to find you." "There's nothing to find me. I'll be fine. I like the city. You don't get bored there." The son replied cheerfully, "You just be careful, son, not to get into fights." "Oh, always you, Mom, something that makes up. I only want to eat as soon as possible, because I'll be late for the next bus," Ethan answered, dumping his suit, shirts, and underwear into his suitcase. The son ate with gusto, and his parents watched him with amusement. Their son's bloodline. The daughter has grown up. The boy is on his feet, and he needs his parents only to check in with them from time to time and show them what he has become. "How long ago did you celebrate your 16th birthday?" "All right, I'm out of here," Ethan said. "God bless Eddie. And remember what I told you. I forgot about Sophia a long time ago." "You really should. There are plenty of beautiful girls in town." Michael only smiled, listening to his son and remembering how hard this son's happiness had been for him. When Ethan left the house, Camille said sadly, "Ethan has left again. Now it's just you and me." "Why alone?" "My brother's napping on the sofa. Christina's coming over. Soon the grandchildren will come. Nowadays, girls are clingy. Not like in our time he didn't dare to hang on their necks." Michael laughed. The next day, Camille went to the city and got a job on the railroad. She had to work 3 shifts, receiving construction materials. Now she rarely saw not only her son, but also her husband. Even on holidays sometimes could not meet. Those who accidentally met Ethan in the city said that they often saw him drunk, walking around town, checking out the diners. Goes home and doesn't show his nose. Michael went to see his son at work, sat down, opposite and coldly, bespeaks that not even 10 years have passed. "I've been in detention from call to call. Was it for this?" The son looked sorrowfully from behind his eyes. He shamefully averted his eyes. "I won't live by my conscience. I'm sorry." Camille several times visited her son in the dormitory, but there did not always make him. It wasn't until New Year's Eve that luck struck. Camille and Michael were at home together waiting for their son. He did arrive, but not alone. Along with him walked in a beautiful hair, a girl smiling, friendly. "Meet my wife," Ethan announced from the doorstep. The mother shuddered like a wife. "Where from?" "From the city. Originally from Minsk region. Works in a cafe as a cook. Anyway, he cooks good food. I won't go hungry." "What's your name?" Michael asked. "Ludmila." "Sweet to my heart," Mila answered father and invited me in. "Come in. The table is set, just waiting for you." Everyone looked at the young people and wondered, "What a beau. Never married, never married. But you have a wife." "We got married. But thank God," Camille nodded. Michael helped the unexpected daughter-in-law to take off her coat, led her to the table, showed her the place, filled the glasses with wine, and said, "Here's to the happiness of the young people. Live in harmony and love. May your dreams come true, and we old people will rejoice in your good fortune." You all drank wine. Only Mila barely killed. She doesn't drink. That's good. Not depraved, Camille thought, and asked when was the wedding, son. "Yes, we had a wedding. My 2 boys and my 2 girlfriends. We went to a restaurant, had a few drinks, and it was over." Camille remembered that she didn't have a real wedding either. Everyone has their own destiny. "So where do you live?" Worried, mother asked. "My sweetheart and I bought an apartment," bragged the son, with a movie in his eyes at his father and mother. "We have to start building a house," said the father, "and us. We'll build. The family has increased. Do we have guests to meet?" Michael smiled happily. "Let's drink to the new year. May it help all our plans come true." "Bitter," Camille proclaimed loudly and solemnly. Mila looked shamefully at Ethan, but he hugged her and kissed her heartily. Michael smiled contentedly and thought, after all, my son has justified the life I gave him. Gave him 12 years of life. In the spring, Mansfield began construction on the subway. The man was still helping out. Even when he wasn't invited to the site, he put up walls. His son helped. Over the summer, they put the roof on, built the furnace, even built a barn to house the livestock. Then my granddaughter Zoya was born. The daughter-in-law moved with the baby to Ethan's parents to help nurse her. Camille gave the baby all her love and tenderness. Michael marveled as he watched his wife. She was up in an instant, happy, as if the feeling of youth had returned to her. And the grandfather himself liked to amuse himself with his granddaughter, listening to her delicate voice. A year later, the daughter-in-law gave birth to another grandson, Jack. The house became crowded and noisy. Camille felt happy. Then came a letter from Camille's older sister, Wendy, who had lived in America for many years. She had already been told the news about her son and grandchildren. Someone complained to Wendy that Ethan was a bad son, not inviting his parents to his wedding. What does he like to drink? Michael knew many of the relatives, out of jealousy, were ready to embarrass a man to make themselves feel more important. Of course, maybe Ethan is not a perfect son, but not worse than others hold the family. Loves his wife and kids. And as for the shot, who doesn't drink nowadays? I was surprised by something else. Living 1,000 kilometers away in America, Wendy was eager to find out about his family, to influence Camille and Ethan. His Michael was persistent in calling him to visit, luring him with his wealth, bragging about the 2-story house where she lived happily with her husband in a rich and free country. In one message, she suddenly wrote Camille, "No need to go. Come alone, I'll show you all of America." She persisted in reminding me that she was childless, which meant that the American inheritance could go to her son Michael and her grandchildren. After all, there were no other heirs. Still, Wendy missed her homeland, dwelling on references to the past. All the more so because she had once had a crush on Michael. He'd felt it at one time and hesitated to choose a wife. He liked the thoughtful, intelligent, well-read Wendy. But Camille was impulsive, selfless. Managed to tie him to herself, however, she moved old age. Michael was afraid to admit that he was gradually losing his sight. The strength was leaving his body. What was next, God knows. However, it was necessary to protect his son and his family. He pulled himself together and wrote a long letter to Wendy and her husband. Hello, dear Wendy and Noah. Received your letter, for which we thank you heartily. Glad you are doing well and are healthy. Enjoy your life. From seeing friends and from working in the garden, I thank you heartily for inviting me to visit you. However, I'm convinced that I won't be allowed in. You know my background. Besides, only close relatives of the father's mother's brothers or sisters are allowed abroad. I'll tell you about Ethan. He used to like to hang out when he was single. Now that he's got kids, it's hardly ever the same. He's good to me and Camille, to his wife. He celebrated his wedding very modestly, only with his closest friends, as he didn't want to burden us with the hassle. Come and meet his family and see for yourself. He's a good family man. We are happy to have grandchildren in our old age, and we're happy that everything worked out great for our son. Our daughter-in-law is beautiful, neat, and cooks well. She is from the village. Work is not afraid. The only trouble is that old age is already reminding us of its presence. But everything is fine. We wish you success, good health. Greetings from our large Mansfield family. He decided to take the letter to the post office, although the day was frosty, but the breeze was already warm for spring. On the way, Michael went to the store where the villagers usually gathered to wait for fresh bread to be delivered. This time, there were several old men and women gathered there. One elderly man was quarreling loudly with a sales clerk, Shina. See what a bitch she is. She cheated me out of 20 cents. You think I'm old and can't count. Sophia threw 2 coins on the counter and yelled a 20 at you. Just get out of my face. You're getting on my nerves. I'm gonna punch you in the face. I don't care if it's a grandma's grandpa taking the swing. If you try to call the police, they'll soon calm you down. Sophia started threatening me. I'll file a complaint today. You won't cheat here. Enraged, the customer promised. Michael pulled the old man by the sleeve and said, chuckling, still flipping with a hammer. And the collection of what? To make it die. Cholera, it's eternally out of balance. Let's go out for some fresh air. Let's remember our youth. Grandpa's angrily scooping coins off the counter. Michael, you're the only smart man I've ever respected. They left the store. At first, they talked about the farm. Only then the man noticed the mailbox hanging on a pole near the store and got excited. He dropped a letter in it. Come on, I'll walk you home. Come on. The 2 old men stomped along the village, looking at the houses where once lived other people who had long ago moved to the cemetery. Now the children and grandchildren of the deceased walked through the village and resembled their predecessors with their facial features. The cycle of life in nature, smiled Michael. And I'm still living. And how do you feel? He asked. When I woke up this morning, I think my fingernails were the only thing that didn't hurt. I'm all beat up. And when you wake up one day and feel nothing hurts, you'll know you're dead. He laughed. Ugh. What are you saying? The old man was angry. No matter how it is, the time to rest will come. When it comes, then we'll talk. Now come on, what's more fun? How many grandchildren do you have? 2. I have 5. I even have 1 great-grandson. I'll outdo you. The peaceful conversation made Michael think of his complicated life. He walked home and thought that many things could have turned out differently. Christina met him at the house. Why are you frowning? I've been thinking. How long have I lived? I've done nothing good. I don't think I've ever done any sins, but I still have enemies in the village. Who am I interfering with? Christina looked at me for a moment, and then suddenly she burst into tears. It's all because of you. You're the reason I'm alone. You didn't let me get married. You stole my youth. Quietly, Christina came out. Camille. People around. The woman frowned and walked away. Michael nervously invited his hair, helped before him by the influx of fog. Sometimes Michael feared that someday the day would come when the white light would be covered by an unsightly fog. And then no, death would follow. But should he blame fate? He's had a good life, thank God. How many men died, and those who worked at the mine with him? How many boys didn't return to their families? That everyone has his own fate. I chose it myself. I go as far as I can. As far as I can. Soon Michael was sent to the hospital for a checkup. He could no longer work as before. A committee was to determine his competence. The diagnosis was disappointing. Mansfield suffers from a mental illness in the form of schizophrenia. The cost of my sacrifice is exorbitant, the man thought. Michael left the hospital tired and devastated, not knowing whether to be happy or sad that he had been declared mentally ill. This diagnosis is the bitter truth of his life, from which it was difficult to come out alive. But he came out, even if his soul was maimed. Bodies of fallen leaves stirred underfoot. Autumn was moving in on the city. Michael walked down the boulevard towards the train station. Wendy sent more and more letters and parcels from America. It was obvious that she longed for her family, but was afraid to come to leave her settled life. However, she insisted on bringing her grandchildren. Camille made up her mind and traveled to America. Was it scary? Of course, she would have liked to take a family member with her, but Michael wouldn't go. He's been declared schizophrenic. Ethan has a tattoo on his shoulder, and his wife has a different name. The daughter-in-law is taking care of the kids. Wendy's anxious to see her granddaughter. But it's not advisable to take the girl away from school. There was no point in taking Christina with her. It would only spread gossip after the village. After weighing all the circumstances, I decided to go alone. When the papers were prepared, put on Camille's simple black dress, took all the necessary things, put them in a backpack. Weary of the train ride to Moscow, she slept through the entire flight to America. At the airport, she was met by Wendy and her sister's husband, who hadn't seen each other in over 30 years. They didn't recognize each other right away. Wendy took a long look at the people who were coming to meet her, until she realized that the tall, thin, aging woman was her own sister. "Are you Camille?" I answered the younger sister, looking at the small, chubby, pink-cheeked Wendy. "How have you aged? It's disgusting to look at," exclaimed the American. I stare at my sister. I'm tired. I work nights on the railroad, picking up construction materials. And when I come home, there is no rest either. Household, yes, grandchildren. Wendy suddenly cried, hugged her sister and kissed her. "You're my martyr. Meet my husband, Noah." Camille held out her hand to the old man with the dark glasses. "Hello, Noah. Nice to meet you. Thank you for the letters and packages." "Hello," my sister's husband replied, and held out a large bouquet of yellow roses. "Let's go to the car. Tired on the road?" "No, I slept the whole time on the airplane." "Thanks for the flowers." They got into the shiny white car and drove through a city with tall buildings, bright advertisements, and lots of people on the streets. Look, Camille, New York is the richest city in the world. America is a free, happy country where even a working man can buy a big house and live there. Do you also have the opportunity to move in with your family? Your grandchildren will have everything they need. Wendy said inspirationally, "I care about that. After all, they are my blood too." It is true that Noah has kinfolk too. The house will have to be divided, but I think we can make a good arrangement. "I wish to God you'd say that," Camille said. But she was bored with the city. Her heart yearned to go home. Wendy visibly parted. The body on the round face was choosing and NOSIK. Her sister had dyed her hair a golden color, so she looked much younger than her years. To a nice pink and lilac dress, very suitable, picked up in the tone of lipstick. Next to her was her younger sister in a black dress with a gray head. "Felt old and ugly. You look good. I'm glad that you, of all our kin, are lucky enough to live in prosperity. We've had a lifetime of grief to remember. It's all right. You'll get some rest. We'll spruce you up. We'll buy new clothes, and you'll be a goddess." Wendy wants to live young, until she is 100 years old. Noah said mockingly, "Would you like me to go down like a hen and run around you?" "You won't." The wife replied irritably, I, thank God, do it myself. I do not need to run around me and hide from old age in vain. I'm tired of your philosophy. The wise man was found. They drove out of town, rushing along the wide highway for quite a long time. Wendy kept asking about her family. At last, they entered a small town. There were low buildings with typical red roofs. Unlike New York, there was plenty of greenery and flowers. The car stopped near an attractive two-story house. This is our house coming out, Wendy said. While Noah put the car in the garage, the sisters walked down the driveway and planted on both sides with colorful roses. Katya's house was really furnished with tasteful rooms, glowing with warmth and coziness. Good, you have with delight, said Camille. Everything shone, shining with cleanliness. Wendy set the pre-prepared dishes on the table, fed her sister from the road, then led her into the small room. This is the room we keep for guests. Getting Camille settled in. All stood on the threshold, looking at the curtains and covers of the cathedral. It's all so beautiful. It's scary to touch, she said. Don't make it up. Lie down, rest, and I'll sit with you. I don't sleep well now. I wake up many times in the night, and then I can't sleep. Tell me about yourself. How are you here? We haven't seen each other for so long. It's okay. It was hard at first. Then I got to know people. Learned the language. I got a job. That's how it was. I got along with Noah. To tell you the truth, I regret that I ever tied my fate to him. They wanted to send me to India to work. I didn't really want to go there. That's when I was introduced to Noah. What, Noah? Camille asked. That's what Noah is called in American. Well, when he found out, he decided to help. He agreed to give me a sham marriage. He wasn't a bad man, but I didn't like his looks. But over time, we became friends. We bought a house together. Noah had the first floor and I had the second. He supported me financially. I got used to him. 2 years later, we got married for real. I got pregnant, but I couldn't carry the baby. I had an operation and was warned that there would be no more children. That's fate, Wendy sighed. But you are happy here, and you have a son and grandchildren. And soon you'll have great-grandchildren. I think your grandchildren are mine too. I comfort myself by understanding that they are in these walls and the beauty of happiness, and in the children and grandchildren life has passed. You can't turn back anything. Wendy sighed. Rest, we'll make another deal. She smiled sadly, waved from the threshold, and left the room, closing the door behind her. Camille woke up out of habit, washed her face early, got dressed, and went down to the first floor. In the kitchen, Noah was sitting at the table drinking coffee. The pleasant aroma of the drink filled. The kitchen seduced. Good morning. The guest said hello. Smells good. Good morning. Noah replied cheerfully. You'll have coffee. Don't mind Wendy. My wife likes to lie in bed. The host got up, seated his guest, poured her coffee, opened the refrigerator, took out smoked meat, 2 eggs, and began to fry scrambled eggs. You always cook for yourself, because I don't trust your sister. She tried to poison me once. God be with you. Noah, what are you saying? Camille exclaimed in surprise. I'm telling the truth. Do you understand? She was living with me. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at some sectarian guys. I'm tired at work and don't realize what's going on with my wife. And she tells me she doesn't want to live with me. Let's sell the house. I told her, live with whoever you want. I'm not selling the house. If your lover loves you, let him take it without the house. She screamed and cried. It happened. I don't want it to happen. That's when it happened. I came home from work on a hot afternoon, got a bottle of beer out of the fridge and took a sip. And there was vinegar in it. Wendy poured it in for something. I ended up in the hospital, had stomach surgery. Could she have done it on purpose or not? I could have been prosecuted. But I loved her. I forgave her everything. Noah put the scrambled eggs on 2 plates. He put one in front of Camille and invited her to have some American eggs. Yes, It's the same everywhere. But you know, Noah, I don't believe Wendy would do this on purpose. I mean, she's always believed in God. Noah asked me to take over the kitchen while I'm here," asked Camille. With pleasure they ate, drank coffee, smiled at each other. A good relationship was immediately established between them. Wendy entered the kitchen. He grumbled unhappily. An oppressive silence settled at the table. The hostess took small sips of coffee and said without addressing anyone, "Soon the guests will arrive. We have to get ready. What can I do for you?" asked Noah. "Go to the grocery store, buy some milk and fresh bread." "Understood," replied Noah, and humming under his breath. The jolly man went out. "Death will come to him, and he'll sing songs to her too," said Wendy irritably after her husband. "Why do you keep gnawing at him? He's a kind man, sociable, cheerful. He's a slacker, not a bad man. I hate him. If I could, I'd stab him with a dull knife. Don't start Wendy in the morning. Is that what's tearing your heart out? Do whatever you want. I'm going to go to the apartment for a bit, and I'll see what's wrong. What about you, making the menu yourself?" Camille stayed in the kitchen. She went about her usual business. She did everything quickly and spaciously. When Noah returned from the grocery store, the kitchen was bubbling and smelling delicious. The guests arrived at 12 o'clock, all sitting around the table, eating, praising Camille's skill. At the table, cheeky girl Emma pissed off Camille in every possible way, mocking life in Russia. When the guests finally went home, Wendy went to see them off, and Camille and Noah stayed at the table. "That relative is sad. People have forgotten how to be happy and cheerful," said the host. In the morning, Wendy came to her sister's bedroom and sat on the bed, complaining of insomnia. She really looked tired. "How did you sleep?" she asked. "Thank God, I sleep well. I don't sing at home every day. I go to bed late and get up early. I'll rest at your place like at a resort. Listen, I keep wondering how Michael let you go. What if you stay here? You know, we don't care about ourselves anymore. As long as the kids and grandkids are happy, and you can stay here with me if you need to, I will. Even if you don't see your husband again until you die." Wendy asked in surprise. "How long do we have to live? Don't you love him?" "You never loved him," Wendy shouted indignantly. "I put up with everything. Never betrayed him, never reproached him, never demanded anything. I waited for Michael from all prisons, from all roads. You know how to make a man's head spin. My old grandfather is capable of nothing, and he's being questioned to do something nice for you. Noah is a good man. He's trying to please me as a relative. You're sly, but I'm not stupid," said Wendy. "I'm not leaving you at home. I'm taking you to the Russian convent. There you will sit and wait for my death and inheritance for your grandchildren. How will they bury me? Then dispose as you wish of what I will leave you in the monastery." The sister marveled. "Can I do that?" "Why not? You know what? This isn't a very sincere speech we're having. I realize you're still alive and well. Wendy, I wish you live a long, long life, and my grandchildren are groomed and fed. They'll be fine without your inheritance." Oh, I'm offended already. "Get in the car. Let's go home," said Wendy. "Why would I be offended? You invited me. I came, I saw you, I talked to you, and thank God. It's time to go home. People will laugh at me if you go that fast. Let's go shopping for presents. Do whatever you want," the sister said indifferently. The next day, she and Wendy went to the supermarket to buy presents. In the evening, Camille was awakened by a touch on her shoulder, opened her eyes and saw Wendy, who said guiltily, "You're asleep." "And I can't sleep. Something's keeping me awake. I can't figure out what it is. Tell me about your grandchildren." "Nice kids. My granddaughter is learning to play the piano. She draws beautifully. They're friends with each other. That makes me happy. It's hard for me to imagine your life," Wendy said sadly. "We have everything here. There seems to be no problems, but there is no happiness." "What did you see happiness in?" "I wanted to have a big friendly family of a husband beloved children and grandchildren. And I have none of that. How did you, sister, take my destiny? Destroyed me. Bitterly, said Wendy. Camille sat up on the bed and asked what was what. You have no idea. I really don't know what you're talking about. You have your own life. But you stole my destiny. It was I who should have been with Michael with reproach and with tears in my eyes, said Wendy. But what is he to be with you? Not to listen to you, not to tell you himself how he lives with you. He chose me. I've loved him all my life. What's that got to do with you? I don't understand. I've loved him all my life. I've only thought about him. And he writes me wooden sentences without feeling. Camille looked at her sister. She knew that Wendy had once liked Michael, but she couldn't imagine that her older sister had carried those feelings through her life. Michael is a different person, Camille said. He didn't love you, he loved me. You can understand me. You're the one who drove him to this state. You made him schizophrenic. If I had been with him, he would have been a wonderful man. He had everything going for him. Natural intelligence, charm. You poisoned his life. What kind of soul do you have? Your head and your soul are empty. I hate you, your son and your grandchildren. I hate you all. Wendy rushed to Camille, grabbed her by the throat, began to choke her. Her sister broke free, turned away. Is that what's bothering you? Go get your Michael. I'll see how you handle this job and the ideas. Camille picked up her bag, started dumping her stuff. Are you going to go? You're not going anywhere. I'm gonna send you off and bury you here. I'm going to Michael. I know what he loved all his life. I'm the only one. Are you crazy? Camille answered calmly. Noah came into the room. He said, What's going on here? Get out of here like a rotten bitch. Wendy shouted angrily. Camille, what happened? Asked Noah. Nothing. I want to go home. Please help me buy a ticket. Michael sat on the bench basking in the last rays of the autumn sun. Footsteps were heard. He turned his head and was surprised to recognize the familiar figure of his wife. Though he couldn't see her face yet, had she come back from America so soon? He wondered. I don't have a sister. Did you have a fight there? Camille said nothing, heading for the door. What you go with, you come back with. What do you want? Then go on your own. Why did you come here so angry and good? I don't need anything. How are the grandchildren? They're fine. Yesterday my daughter-in-law came to visit. She said they're all healthy. That's our greatest treasure. Camille's back. Maybe she brought a present. Christina shouted, I brought you a present. I'll give it to you later. Camille was quiet. It had been a joyless trip. The return was the same. Would you tell me anything? Asked her to live well. Americans live well, but even their happiness is not given to everyone. Happiness does not depend on money and the fact that you have a 2-story house with a mirrored bathroom. You see, everyone is unhappy in their own way. And if someone is rich, they can still come up with 100 reasons to be unhappy. You tell me about Wendy, how she asked for Christina. That's what I'm talking about. She's got a house, 2 cars, but no joy. There's only anger, irritation, old age, and fear of death. Sister fights with Noah. Noah takes offense. That's their life. Camille took some beautiful colors out of her bag and gave the handkerchief to Christina. Thank Wendy for not forgetting about me. It's not Wendy. I bought it for you in Moscow, and my sister didn't give it to me. She promised to send you a package. The woman lied, not wanting to talk about her fight with Wendy. All right, I'll wait. Michael, leaning low over the desk, taking notes. Even though he was almost blind, he kept a diary. Today there's an entry in his notebook. It's a warm, sunny day. Fall is late. Camille came back and said that America has everything but happiness. Subscribe and click the bell. Adriana's parents were overjoyed when she was born. The cute, blonde-haired girl with blue eyes looked up at her mother and smiled. Hi. The woman held her in her strong arms. What are you doing with her? You've got work to do. yelled to the woman by her mother, who wouldn't let her rest for a minute. "So, what did you just give birth to? No one will feed the cattle. Lie down for a while, and I'll be there soon," said the new mother to her baby girl. She laid her in a makeshift crib that was made from an old stroller. Adriana's father was also a hard worker. He wasn't at home at all, always out and about. "I can't." Tiredly, Betty perked up on the stool that stood in the kitchen. "It's okay. She's got a little helper. She'll grow up soon." "She'll help you," the woman said, pointing at the still uncomprehending Adriana. "Yes, another person who was born not to live but to suffer," Betty sighed. They lived in the village. Since childhood, the girl had only seen dirty manger from which the animals ate. Every day she had to get up before the sun came up, milk a cow, and then another, then take them out to the field. When you came back, clean up the pigs, feed the rabbits and the goats and all the others. And if, God forbid, someone's mother doesn't count in the evening, it's a headache. That's how Betty grew up. "Betty, marry me." One day a young guy named Sam drove up to the house on a tractor. "Aha, what a ransom you've got on that tractor." She laughed. "I'll find the ransom. What do you want?" He set it back. The piglet was met by Betty's mother. "Oh, it's a piece of cake." The boy laughed. "So spit. Then you'll have a girl." The woman wouldn't let go of him. "Are you going to give me to my mother for a piglet?" "I won't hurt anymore," Betty asked. Tears came to her eyes. "But are you going to go or what?" The young man waited for her answer. "Let's go." The young girl waved her hand then. For some reason at that moment, she thought that a man would appear in the house would become easier. But it was only in her head. It didn't get easier. It seemed to be the opposite. It only became more troublesome. "Do you need this wedding?" grumbled her mother then. "How many things to prepare and do. Why should I be left without a party?" Betty was teaching horses then. "I'll see you tomorrow." After that feast, the woman knew that even if there was a war, the animals would have to be fed. Why didn't I ever get up after the feast? I couldn't sleep at all. And at first light, I'm already there. The cow is in shock. The girl resented her mother constantly because she did not appreciate and did not love her. That's how family life began. She cooks in the morning knee-deep in manure, and in the evening again with the cattle. And in summer, she never got out of the vegetable garden. First she plants, then she starts to plunge and weed, and then it's time to dig. Any intimacy with her husband was out of the question. When it was time to sleep, she just fell on the bed and fell asleep. "Betty, when my granddaughter will give birth to me?" her mother asked. "When the time is right, then I will give birth." "You don't give me a break." "All work." "Yes, work. When will you have grandchildren?" She said to the woman. "Of course, it's your mother's fault again. You have a job. Your mother is wrong. You have no children." And again she was nagging. But the woman, "All right, Mom, don't be offended." "No offense. I'm just tired." She hugged me hard. Betty mother. And here's the pregnancy thinking that at this point, everyone would get off her back and she could get some rest. But no, it didn't work out again. Even with all the chores done, feet feeling stiff, tummy tingling. No, it's one thing. "Get up. Work. What are you doing out there?" shouted her mother from the street, where she had swept the yard. "I can't. It's hard." Almost made Betty cry. We in the field objected, "Get up and work." The woman couldn't let her do anything and the others around her just lay there. Now the girl was getting up. The labor started at night. Betty asked for a doctor to be called, but the mother said she could handle everything herself. Now the daughter was lying down and looking around. She didn't know what lay ahead of her. Betty looked at her little girl. She wished her happiness and nothing else. "Betty, why are you sitting there?" "I think it's your mother who's dead." Sam came into the house. "Don't you get it? Wife, go to the henhouse and look for your mother-in-law." He gestured. Betty was scared. What if her husband was telling the truth? She opened the coop door. Mom was lying in some strange position. The woman was either kneeling or bent over, but her head was on the ground. Mom touched her Betty, and she just fell to the side. "Sam." The woman called out then. Tears sprang from her eyes. "She's dead." The husband came running. Together, they carried the woman to another place. They had to prepare everything for the funeral. The neighbors, of course, helped. No one passed by in such distress. Everyone gathered, gave Betty advice on how and what was best to do. At the cemetery, everyone stood for a long time. The whole village knew the woman as a good and working woman. No one had ever said a bad word about her in her life. "Thank you." She thanked her neighbors and Betty's mother's friends. "What are we going to die for? You're coming to help too, aren't you?" "You are." "Sure. How could I not?" Betty cried again, even though she'd thought different things about her mother when she was alive. But now that she was gone, she realized what a valuable person she was in her destiny. "What will we do without her?" I read Betty. "Did your husband ever nag you? He's tired of his wife moaning. I have to take care of the cattle and the garden. I can't do it alone." She wasn't crying anymore. She was just talking. "What do you need me for?" Husband frowned. "I didn't believe in him." The wife didn't believe in him at all. "I've never once seen you get up and go milk a cow," she said. "Examples. Here's another cow I'm taking to the pigsty. Oh, let me feed it." The husband was indignant. He realized he was wrong. "Let's sell everything and buy an apartment in the city." Suddenly, the wife calmed down. She looked at him with big eyes. "Why are you so full of hogwash? What city? What are we going to do there?" He twisted his finger at his temple. "Are we going to get a job there?" Betty was dreaming with no education and no experience. "You'll be a Belarusian there. Wait and be happy." He said it all backwards. Sam. He couldn't sit with his wife anymore. Said he went to work and left the house. "Finally, no one's harassing me. I can lie down for a while," she said to Adriana. And she was lying there, looking at her mom, and still didn't understand anything. "I'll never be like your grandmother. If you want to do something, please, it's your life, your choice," Betty told her daughter, but she wasn't allowed to lie down for long. The animals started reminding her in different voices that they were hungry too. Now Betty got up and reluctantly went to the yard, and there were heavy buckets, sacks, and other things again. Adriana grew up a bright girl. She learned early to read, write, and recite. There was no one to teach her. The kindergarten was on the other side of the village. At first her mother took her there, but then she realized that it was easier for a girl to stay at home, and in some cases she could already help. The little girl gave her mother a broom under the floor, and she herself went to work in the pigsty. Adriana thought it was a game. She did everything her mother asked her to do. "My little one, you help with the dishes." Her mother would fill the basin with water. Adriana just splashed it around like that. She grew up running around with the other kids outside. "You don't think about anything at that age. Adriana, come home." Betty realized she was turning into her mother, and she didn't want to be. She worked all day long. Her hands were like nothing else. They were as rough as a man's. "Adriana, it's time to go to school." Daddy went to town, bought her some pens and pencils. The girl was so excited about it all. She couldn't wait to be at the desk. Studying wasn't easy. Some things the girl just didn't understand. There was no one to explain. The older boys and their parents went to the city. From there, they brought back different magazines. Adriana looked at the beautiful girls in the pictures and dreamed that her life would be exactly the same. She would grow up, go to the city to study, find a rich fiancé, and leave this village forever. And something spilled. "Can't you help your mother sometimes?" "No, you can't." Feet to the ceiling. They don't want to do anything. Betty asked her when Adriana was in high school, "Mom, leave me alone. I'm not gonna do anything. I used to help when I didn't realize it. Now I just don't want to." Her daughter answered her, "What do you mean, I won't? Who will?" You eat, you drink. Where do I get it all? There was a woman standing over her. I don't know. You can buy everything now. Go to the store. You can get eggs, meat, potatoes, curling her fingers. Enumerated and then waved away Adriana. Ah, I'll show you how to buy. You'll go to the vegetable garden now and feel it all. Her mother swung a towel at her. What are you doing? She jumped up from the couch. A girl. So they could run around the room for a while. Adriana didn't do well in school. She thought she'd finish school and then she'd see what she could do next. She kept looking at beautiful pictures, which she liked so much since childhood. The girl dreamed a lot, and she didn't know what she wanted to be. Just rich, happy, and perhaps to live far away from here. Adriana, let's go to the disco. The girls came in after her. Now she was finishing expanding. The girl, she was prominent blonde hair, big blue eyes, legs, as they say, from the ears. Except she didn't have any outfits or jewelry. But she wasn't desperate. She did it all by herself on magazines, learned to sew, remade herself from the old things of her grandmother and mother, dresses, shirts. And today she wore a new outfit she'd just finished yesterday. And where do you get it all from? Her friends wondered. There is no more, she told them in response and laughed. Her mother only sighed, and she realized that she had been like that herself. Why don't we even have a computer at home? Adriana asked her mother, even smirking. We don't have a lot of things. We need money for everything. So we have to earn it. Adriana said smugly. You, like Betty, looked at your daughter with tired eyes. Why is that a problem? The girl wondered then. It isn't for you. The woman was amused. Wait, we have chickens, goats, cows, pigs. And that's all money. Curl your fingers. Adriana. Oh, really? Who needs it? Your milk? If everyone here has so much of it, it's a shame a mother can't even be understood by her own daughter. Let me go to the highway and sell it all every day, the girl suggested to her. The woman agreed well then. She herself once wanted to earn money like that, but it didn't work out. Now, while school was on vacation, Adriana got up with the rooster. She would pack a huge bag and ride her bike to the highway. There were lots of cars. They stopped, but almost all of them were asking for something ready to go. The girl realized that it was useless to stand here with meat. Milk and eggs were taken, but no meat. Mom, let's make some meat. Let's make some cheburek, and piroshki can be made of cabbage and potatoes, she suggested to the woman. Betty thought about it. Why do drivers who have gone somewhere far away need to buy raw meat or eggs when they just want a snack? And here stood a young girl with pies. Here you go, cheap and surly. I realized that my daughter was talking, so I agreed with her. Well, daughter, I didn't even think you had such an entrepreneurial spirit. You know how to do everything yourself. Do it. The woman let her. Betty was willing to help. Then what good is Adriana if all she does is sell? Any fool can do that. And you go for eggs, forget meat, mushrooms, potatoes, cabbage. Then you'll be in business for sure. The girl herself didn't realize how she got involved in all this. Adriana was getting up even earlier now. She had a lot to do. She has to bring in the dough, stuffing, cooking, and then wait for everything to take place and get ready. She'd arrive at the track with bags full of pies with different fillings. Everything was sold out in a matter of hours. I couldn't be happier. Thank you. It's delicious. She already had regular customers who often traveled here for work or just for business. The girl was interested in bookkeeping. She had to keep a tally. How much is minus? How much is plus? So she learned the basics from some old books from the library, and with the help of the cashier Baba Olai, she realized that the cost of her pies, especially with cabbage, potatoes, and eggs, was a penny. But the profit was tangible. Adriana began to save. She opened a special deposit in the bank, where she transferred all the money. She had almost no expenses, just flour, sugar, and salt. It wasn't much. Mom, This is your half, this is mine. She gave the woman the money. What a daughter. Why didn't you say something before? Betty realized that now money was starting to appear in their family. The woman wasn't going anywhere. She put it in a box so she could just get it out when she needed it. And you said you didn't have it, and you couldn't earn it. Adriana replied in a businesslike manner. She was flattered that she was still in school and already earning money for the house. Finally, her mom started to praise her. All quiet, study if you like. The woman left. She was really happy that her daughter was doing something. The girl was so much into her work that she had no time for anything else. The bookkeeping took her like a whirlwind. All those bills, kids, bad loans. Just keep up with the communications, the balance sheet. Now she didn't know what she wanted to do more. School was ahead of her. But Adriana didn't want to go back because she was already independent. Why teach her anything else? Have you forgotten that you have a ruler on your nose? Mom asked. They wanted to go to the city to buy some upgrades for September 1. But Adriana was busy, so Betty didn't bother her. No, arranging for a neighbor to drive to the track for me, Adriana replied. She was so reluctant to leave her lucrative business. Okay, I'll stay out of your business. Mom was leaving again. She didn't make her daughter do anything at all now, because she realized it was hard enough as it was. She gets up when it's still dark and starts fiddling with her dough. What can I say? Good for her, bringing money into the house. Betty will do it herself somehow. The neighbor's name was Sofia. She lived alone. She was in her 30s. I don't know what she did for a living, but she didn't work. That's why Adriana decided to go to her. She was ready to do everything herself, and all she wanted to do was take it to her and make it happen. Sofia, hi. Adriana came to her. She knew the girl, but now for some reason she was worried. Come in, she called her. That neighbor liked to have visitors, old or young. She was always alone, and this was some kind of entertainment. The girl came in. She told the neighbor she liked the idea, and according to Adriana's calculations, Sofia would make a decent income. She agreed. Adriana was generally happy when school started. She was up and about. Early in the morning, she would make the dough and take it to Sofia, and she would go to the track in the morning. And things were going well. Like today, Adriana came to her neighbor, and they counted together how much they had sold and what they had earned from it. That's great. There are a lot of customers who like different hotcakes. She put the proceeds on the table for her. The bills were of various denominations, but Adriana never missed a single one. 2i part gave Adriana's honestly earned Sofia money. She realized that if she didn't share, then nothing at all in life would work out. She came home, counted there was enough for a TV. But the girl dreamed of a computer or a laptop. She had already spent home. Internet was the only thing missing right now. She decided that she would go and buy one, and she wouldn't listen to anyone, and put the rest of the money in a deposit until later. What do you need it for? You'll go to school there and buy it. Betty was puzzled. She didn't understand anything about modern gadgets. What are you talking about? Young people have their whole life there today. The girl realized that her mother had never encountered such things. Well, I don't know. Betty just shrugged his shoulders. 11th grade was coming to an end. The income was decent. Adriana could afford more than just a laptop anymore. I'm going to the city this weekend, she told her parents. Good, you are already independent. Her mother agreed with her. I will buy myself a dress for graduation and a laptop, said Adriana, and dreamily, your money, you buy what you want. Her mom didn't understand why she would spend money on an unnecessary item. Adriana waited for this day. She was not often in the city and went there only once a year with her parents, and that was when she needed to buy something. The rest of the time she was in the village. But it all went. She kissed Betty and left the house, and life was very different in the city, even though it was small. Adriana went shopping, looking at the dresses there, the shoes. She liked everything so much. She realized that she couldn't buy it just because she had nowhere to wear it. Could you show me this dress? she asked the counselor. Yeah, now she was surprised. I mean, it was at the very end. They thought they wouldn't sell it to anyone. Oh, it's beautiful. In Adriana's eyes, it was bright, lush. What do you think? The girl seller looked at her very well. That's it. I'm taking it. She didn't even bother to look at the other dresses. Great choice. They'll probably give me a bonus for selling it. The consultant thought to herself. Thank you. A happy Adriana walked out of the store. After that, she went to the hardware store, where she spent a long time choosing something. But because she didn't understand anything, she couldn't make up her mind. Hello, my name is Michael. Can I help you? A young man approached her. Yes, I need a good laptop, she said. Let's see. He went down the aisles of technology. Okay, waiting, nodded Adriana. This is a great one. You can play and work on it. The young man held the box in his hands. Super, its price is good. The girl could not believe that he was holding in his hands what he had dreamed of for so long. Then let's go to the cash register. He showed her the direction. Adriana was happy. It was now possible to drive home in front of the store. She saw a cute cafe and decided to go in there. She walked in, took a seat, and placed her order. The prices here were not that expensive. The girl was just enjoying herself. Hi. She heard a man's voice behind her back, while the girl turned in her head, flashed 1,000 thoughts. Who could it be? And when she saw Michael, she smiled back. What are you doing here? Simply, she asked him. I came to have lunch at home. I have no time, and it's far away. He sat down across from her. The consultant from the store was also not timid, although the girl did not let him. He still took a seat at her table. Do you mind? He suddenly came to his senses when he had already ordered. Why are you laughing? It's more fun then. The girl did not think that so soon she would have new acquaintances in the city. I'm Michael, you already know. What's your name? He looked at the strange girl. Adriana. She laughed again. Nice to meet you. Did you come from somewhere? He asked, because she looked a little different from the way city people dressed. Yes, she told him the name of the village, which to the young man was just an empty sound. And now it makes sense, he smirked. What do you understand? She looked at him surprised. That I'd never seen you before. He found something to say. They sat and chatted. An hour went by without a second thought. Well, I have to go to work. He got up from the table. Come on, call and write. She waved him off. She and Michael exchanged phone numbers. After that, the girl went to the bus station. She had to get back. How was the trip? Her mother greeted her perfectly, and she put her shopping on the table. Wow, daughter, how much did you save? The woman wondered. What's the difference? She didn't want to talk about it. Adriana wanted to sit down at the table, turn on the new appliances, and try them out. When the girl did all that, it didn't work, so she dialed Michael's number. Hey, listen, I can't figure this out. She started telling him about her problem. The guy explained everything. And now Adriana's online. Thank you. She thanked him. You're welcome. He disconnected. The girl was so sucked in. Was it that she couldn't finish until the morning, browsing different sites? Adriana, what are you doing up? The mother got up in the morning to take care of things. Oh, Mom, wait. She waved it away. The girl saw that it was possible not to go constantly to the highway and not to stand there and just open a tent or a stall. She sat down and began to think. Then she remembered that in their center grandmothers sometimes sell seeds. They have iron trays. I wish she could get one of those. Father, could you make me a sip like in the center? She asked her father. It's easy. Only iron is needed, he said. And where to get it? Enterprising Adriana was ready for anything. We could go to a doctor. Does he take anything? Yes, he does, the man suggested. By lunchtime, Adriana was outside Jack's house. Hi. She'd known the man for years. What are you doing here? He was surprised. Usually different men with iron came to him. Mitya, help. I need iron to weld a tray like the one in the center. Adriana started asking him. She was making such a sad face. What a conversation. Come in. He let her into the yard. There was a lot of stuff here. Adriana didn't understand much of it, and Jack couldn't tell her. He was just a receiver, not an expert. So the girl ran after her father. He immediately found 4 long sticks of iron. Then some other little things. Adriana didn't understand what would come of it, but the parents seemed to know everything. Can I help you? The daughter asked him. How can you help me? The man laughed. The girl saw that in his spare time he was pounding something with a sledgehammer and dumping with a machine. A week later in the vegetable garden stood such a tray, as if it was brought from the factory yesterday. Now we will install it, and then we can insulate it, promised her father. Cool. The girl was happy. The school graduation was over. Adriana wore the brightest and most beautiful dress. It was in the city. It was already out of fashion. But here in the village it was the most fashionable. Afterwards, many of the boys went to the river, others went somewhere else. But Adriana didn't have time for that. She came home, surfed the internet for a while, and then went to sleep for a couple of hours. Together with her father on the tractor, they brought the new equipment to the track, put it in a place that would not disturb the drivers. Now Adriana had her own spot where she could stand and sometimes even sit down. We should buy a dough machine, she told her mother. Do whatever you want. It's your business. The woman laughed. Michael, hi. She called her friend in town. Oh, how are you? He was happy to hear from her. Hey, do you guys sell dough machines? She asked him. Sure. He was willing to help. Can I ask you something? She said sweetly. Try. He didn't mind her requests. Could you buy it and bring it over? You will come to me on the weekend, and I'll show you everything here. You'll have a rest, cried his girlfriend. Great. It's been a long time since I went to the countryside. He was even happy. The girl was waiting for the weekend to come. Not only that she will get a new appliance, but also the guy will come. Which, by the way, she liked. Saturday, she went to the station where she was supposed to meet Michael, and she told her mom that she had a guest coming. She was at home getting ready to meet him. Adriana waved hello when he was still on the bus. But it's a long drive to you. He climbed out of the soulful cabin. It's okay. She looked at the large box in the young man's hands. Yes, checked everything. Everything works, he vouched for it. When the young men came home, Adriana immediately began to show and tell what they have here and how. Everything was so interesting. It was as if he was in the village for the first time. You have not been on the street yet. The girl told him. They ate. Then Adriana took him to see the local sights. Man, you are lucky to live in such a place. The boy admired the nature. Yeah, all you city people want to go to the countryside, but you only spend a few days here. You know how hard life in the countryside is. It's like Adriana was complaining. Can I come next weekend? Michael asked her. Why not? She looked embarrassed. For the first time in their acquaintance, the couple walked around all day. And in the evening, tired, they returned home. Did you like it? Adriana asked him. Very much. He was telling the truth. What was the best part? Adriana was curious about everything. You. He took his eyes aside. Are you kidding? She blushed again. No, why would I do that? Michael was looking at Adriana now. When did you realize it? They were sitting in her room on the bed. There in the city, when I first saw you, I thought you had fallen from the moon. He began to tell the girl the truth. And then what changed? That wasn't very nice to hear. I don't know. You're so open, so pure. He couldn't find the words. He was embarrassed. She wanted to get up, but the guy took her hand and pulled her to him. Adriana. His face was so close she was trembling. Can I kiss you? Michael asked. Try. She closed her eyes. It was the first kiss in a girl's life. It turned out to be very pleasant. She opened her eyes and looked at the young man. "Will you go out with me?" he asked. Yes, she wanted to nod, but didn't have time to do so. The boy's lips connected with hers again. "Children, come to the table," her mother shouted. Now Adriana felt like her face was on fire, and her mother was about to notice what they were doing here. "Let's go." Michael lifted her out of her seat. Aha! She stood up, walked over to the mirror. Nothing about her appearance had changed. After dinner, the young people secluded themselves in the room again. "Are you sleepy?" Adriana asked Michael. "Not really," he said. "Maybe we'll go for another walk." If during the day the girl was in a fighting mood, she wanted to show and tell her boyfriend everything. Now it was romance. "Let's go." There was nothing to do anyway. They left the yard and went straight to the river. Michael was holding her hand. It was so nice. By the river they sat and kissed. A spectrum of new sensations opened up for Adriana today. Then they came home, and both of them went to bed at night. The girl felt the young man hugging her. It was unusual, even when she had to get up to start the dough. She didn't want to disturb him. It was the first morning she'd slept in, as if she'd overslept. "What are you doing asleep?" her mother asked her. "I don't know." Probably because we were out all night last night," the girl answered. She realized that now she was not free. She had a young man with whom she was ready to go anywhere. In the morning, Michael was surprised when he did not find the girl around. He went to the kitchen, but there was no one there either. The guy made coffee, sat down, and waited for someone to come. He woke up. A woman came through the door. "Yeah. Where are you all?" He asked the question that had been plaguing him for almost an hour. "Adriana." "At work, and we're out in the yard doing chores," she answered simply. Which job was he most interested in? "She'll be here in a minute to tell you." Betty thought, why pry into the youth's business? If Adriana didn't tell him anything, then it was necessary. Adriana returned an hour after their conversation with her mother. "Hi." He came over and kissed her. "You what?" "It's a good thing Mom's not around." Adriana was scared. "You smell like pies." Michael even squeezed his eyes shut. "Do you want me to make you some?" she asked me. "Who did you cook for before?" The guy tensed up. "You what?" "I sell them on the highway." She laughed. "Now I see where you got such capital." He was happy too. "Okay, if you want to get home tonight, you'll have to move." She looked at her watch. "What's later?" "There's no bus." He didn't feel like leaving. "No, not until early tomorrow morning." The girl knew the schedule by heart. "I see. Then he should go to work tomorrow." He sighed, not sad. She came close to the guy. She wanted to kiss him so badly. But her mother was going to be entering the house any minute. "It's okay," he squeezed her hand. Adriana saw Michael off. She waited with him for the bus. And here she couldn't help but kiss him goodbye. He got on the bus and waved. It felt so good. Now she knew she had a boyfriend from the city. It was several times faster to work with the dough machine. Now she didn't have to stand around and waste time kneading it. "Daughter, are you planning to go to college?" the mother inquired. "No. Why would I?" She made up her mind a long time ago. A man with an education can be useful anywhere. In her time, Betty didn't get anything either, but she didn't complain now. Who needed her diploma for cows? "Mom, I'm doing fine. And if something goes wrong, I'll think of something new." The girl was sure of herself. "Okay, I'm not bothering you." The woman saw that she was only annoying her daughter with her talk. Adriana now lived from Saturday to Saturday when her lover arrived. They would go out in the morning. Adriana would go out to trade and Michael would sleep at her house. "Adriana, are you two dating?" asked her mom quietly in the kitchen while her boyfriend was still awake. Yes, she blushed because she was embarrassed in front of her mom. "Good boy. Hang in there." His woman was pleased. "Where shall we go today?" The young man asked Adriana. "Shall we go to the forest for mushrooms?" she suggested. "Good. I haven't been in the woods in 100 years. Michael was even happy about it. They wandered through the woods. stopped in some places, kissed. I love you. It's only been a few weeks. How are they dating? And Michael was already saying those big words. And I love you. She was saying to him, maybe we'll get married. Michael held her hands. The fact that it had only been so short a time. After we first met, she rounded her eyes. And you still don't get it. It's clear to me. He was taking her to his place. Michael, what are we going to do then? She used to dream about the city so she could move there. But now she realized that if she left, she'd be out of money. What do you say? He turned away. What am I supposed to say? Adriana really didn't understand it. In the city. I live in a rented apartment. If you want, we can go there. He didn't know what she expected of him either. No, I think we should stay in the village. She disagreed. The girl. Then I'll be out of a job. He bowed his head. You'll be helping me. Do you know how much business there is here? She was sure of it. Okay with the offer. I'm serious. But where we're going to live is something we need to think about. Let's not go any further. The couple went home with full pictures. Tomorrow we can bake mushroom pies, Adriana said. Do you want me to help you? Asked the young man. And if you don't mind. And if you want to, why not? And she didn't refuse any help. The next day, the guy saw what his future wife was really doing. They got up at 500 hours. Adriana set the dough to start. And she herself started on the stuffing. Paris, please, cabbage. That's how you did it on Michael. Aha. He never got up that early. That's why everything was falling apart for him right now. He almost cut himself twice. Why are you so awkward? Adriana asked him. You know, I'm not used to getting up so early, Michael told her. Oh, how gentle we are. The girl laughed back. After that, the young man and the girl loaded full bags of pies and drove to the highway. This is where you work. Michael, that was interesting. Yeah, is there something you don't like? Adriana didn't understand why the young man was acting like that today. I'm sorry, I'm fine. I just didn't sleep well tonight. He was watching different cars drive up and buy pies from his girlfriend. Do you want to try one yourself? Adriana suggested that he start selling them himself. No, what are you doing? I'm not gonna make it. For some reason, that's what he thought. Well, maybe you could at least try. She wouldn't calm down. Adriana, stop it. Even though it was his thing, he was embarrassed. You know, Michael, money can't smell. Adriana turned away. It was like she was offended by him. What's wrong with you? What are we going to fight over nothing? He went over to the girl and hugged her. You don't understand. This is my job. I take it very seriously. Adriana already regretted that she decided to show him everything today. Okay, I have the exact same job. I'm sorry I didn't get it. That's it. No more pies. She showed him the empty bags. Great. Home, then. Michael didn't understand why he had said all those things to the girl. They drove home. Adriana laid out on the table the money they had earned today. Michael looked at it all and saw that it was more than he could earn in a week. Wow, he whistled. What did you want? I wouldn't just do this for nothing. Adriana looked at her young man and she was happy. Whatever was he saying? The young man had to leave again. He didn't want to break up, but no one had canceled his work in the city. And again, they stood at the bus station, hugging, kissing. Will you write when you arrive? Adriana asked him. I will. He held her tightly against him once more. Michael worked for a week, and so did Adriana. They missed each other, but neither of them could decide where they would be better off. The girl insisted on the countryside, while the young man didn't want to leave the city. What does Michael say? Mom asked her daughter that she wanted to stay in the city. She answered, and her expression was very sad. I see you're against it. The woman felt sorry for her daughter. She didn't know why. She just worked hard. Now she was calling a young man to her, but he didn't even want to go to a ready-made house. What's in there then? But she didn't say anything out loud. Let them live as they are, or then she would be the last one. I don't want to talk about it yet, the girl admitted to her. For the rest of the summer, Michael and Adriana lived like that. He constantly came to her on weekends, and sometimes she went to him. Well, we're only going to see each other on Saturday. How did she put the question seriously? What do you suggest? He couldn't understand what Adriana wanted from him. Move to the village or organize your schedule so that you could work there during the day and come here in the evening. They both knew it was impossible. But it wasn't good either. Okay, I'll agree to move to the country. Somehow Michael agreed right away. And once he'd made up his mind, it was surprising Adriana. He'd recently really compared his spending on traveling back and forth. Thought he'd find something here. Good, then you'll help your father insulate my place now, she told the young man without any problems. He agreed immediately. From that moment, normal life together began. Should we rent a house? Adriana asked her mom. Do you not have enough space here? Didn't she understand? No, but we might be shy. The girl knew that wasn't true. But she wanted to be alone, not with the whole crowd. And live then. Why waste money? Didn't let Betty's daughter go. Michael, together with Adriana and her father, had gotten over everything quickly. It was warm and dry now. She bought herself a lot of appliances. Now she hardly did anything herself with more and more pies every day. Who would have thought she'd turn out so much on some pies? Said the mother to her future son-in-law. The young people applied. They had to register in the city. They traveled there the day before, and already in the village local cult workers arranged an off-site registration, and then sit-downs in the club. They took away all the chairs and put big tables there. The bitterness was all that could be heard throughout the village. Adriana was happy. Sure, things in her life hadn't turned out as beautifully as she wanted, but that was good too. She continued her work, and Michael began to help his father-in-law. Does your work make any difference? His wife asked him when he got home. What good is it? I wish we'd stayed in town. There was work there. He said. The young man was in a bad mood. What are you saying? Adriana was afraid to talk about the city. She didn't want to go there at all. Nothing. He knew she wouldn't go anywhere with him because she was fine here. You live in the middle of nowhere. You don't need anything, and the money piles up. One day, the men came home from work. When Michael entered the room, Adriana smelled alcohol on him. What are you doing? It's not like you haven't tried it at all. She couldn't believe her husband would do such a thing. Your father offered me a small drink. I didn't refuse, he replied abruptly. All right, come on, go to bed. She threw back the blanket on the bed. After that, Adriana seriously considered renting a house. She realized that if her husband drank with her father, one time would not stop there. The very next day, she went to the head, asked if there were any houses available. Adriana, I thought you were coming to see me after the wedding. A man said to her, should I have? She got a little nervous. Sure, we have a cabin. I can give it to you. He laughed. How do you mean allocate it for free? She couldn't believe they were giving anything away for free at this time. Yeah, but it's on village land. You can do whatever you want with it, just don't sell it. And of course, if there's an emergency, you'll have to pay money for it. The man in front of her said, I'm in. She signed all the papers, came home. Michael, we're moving, the girl said. What do you mean? Where? Mom couldn't believe it was actually happening. Turns out we were supposed to get a house. We didn't know. She looked at her mom. Did she know? I hear you. Betty sat down in her chair. She wasn't in the mood. What are you so upset about? I didn't go to the city. I went next door. Adriana was sure that things would get better for them now. The things that weren't much loaded into the tractor cart, and they were able to move everything in one go. The cabin was small. It was cozy inside. The room and kitchen Adriana and her mom had already had here. They cleaned everything, hung it up, and arranged the curtains. How do you like our house? Adriana asked her husband. It's fine. Michael hadn't been himself lately. Listen, we have a lot of men who go on shift. Maybe you could get a job there. She gave him an idea. Why, I don't mind. And the money's good. And you don't have to worry about it. He's kind of excited about it. Then go to the breakfast bear, who lives next door to your mother. I'll check with him. Adriana. It was hurtful to hear the words eyesore. Well, he put his arm around his wife, and they went to bed. The first night was uneasy. The neighbor's dog barked so much that no sleep came. But fatigue took its toll, and Adriana and her husband fell asleep. But I've made the arrangements. I'll send the documents tomorrow. And a month later, Michael spoke joyfully. You say that as if you're fed up with me. She looked at him resentfully. It's just that I'm tired of sitting around doing nothing. That's why I was excited about new prospects. He kissed his wife. Good, if that's the case. She looked up at him, her eyes slightly moist with tears. Michael will be leaving now. Move back in. What are you going to do there? Betty said to her daughter. No, I'm comfortable. No one bothers me. And I didn't agree with her either. Adriana. Well, live alone. The mother said angrily. Why are you taking offense again? Her daughter came over and hugged her. It's okay. At that moment, the father entered the house, who was out with his friends again. Daddy. And again the daughter looked at him. And he didn't say anything and went to the couch. How am I supposed to be alone here? No one to help me at all. Betty started wailing. I don't get it. Adriana, you used to be the go-to guy. And now you can't wait. Betty cried. Adriana came home. Michael had set the table. She stood there looking at all this beauty. Did I forget that today is a holiday? She asked him. No, I just thought I'd glorify it by going away. He said cheerfully. I feel like I'm seeing off the bride's son. Adriana sat down on a chair. Something was beginning to displease Michael again. How was she reacting to the fact that he was just excited about his new job? That evening they sat well at the table, discussed everything, and even imagined when Michael would bring the first paycheck, where they would spend it. I'd like a vacation somewhere, she said. I wouldn't say no to that either. He took her hand. Then we'll have to get the passports. Her eyes were already wide open, as if this wasn't going to happen anytime soon, but tomorrow. I think we'll have to save up a little and then we'll go, her husband told her. According to Adriana, it was good. Michael had left. Now he wouldn't be home for a month. Adriana had no time to be bored. She decided she was going to make her turkey place into some sort of diner. Now there were not only pies, but tea and coffee. Drivers could drive up, buy, and then enjoy a rotting beverage and a tasty pie in the parking lot. Did you wait so long outside the house for her? Her mother decided to go out not just in the morning, but all day. She told me that she had bought a microwave and could heat right there. I'm visiting. The woman's a little miffed. Why don't you come in? Do you know where the keys are? The daughter was surprised. I don't know. I didn't dare without you. And only now mother and daughter entered the gate. It was beautiful at home. Adriana had been cooking all morning. The mother sat down at the table. She sighed. Something had happened, the daughter guessed. Your father. She raised her eyes to Adriana. There was a small bruise under one of them. What had gotten into him? She didn't understand. I don't know. Every day with her friends lately. Betty sighed again. And how you put up with all this? I have kicked you out a long time ago. Adriana got up and put the kettle on the stove. I can't. He's the boss, the woman reasoned. Yes, he is. He only poured one name, and Adriana poured tea. They sat at the table with Mom some more. And then the woman got ready to go home. It would have stayed. The girl suggested it. No, I have my own house. Betty left the house. Adriana sat down on the couch and decided to write a message to her husband. She had already written to him, but either he didn't read them or they didn't reach her. He didn't pick up the phone either, no matter how many times she dialed him. All right, "If you don't want to talk, we won't talk," she said and put the phone aside. Aside from that, the girl had a lot of other things to do. She filled out the necessary forms to apply for passports, sent them, and waited for a reply. Afterward, the girl opened pictures and stories about the beaches and hotels that are on the sandy seashore. How beautifully set, she and considered everything that came across. Michael wrote that he was coming in 2 days. It was such a joy. Adriana immediately began to prepare. And she boiled some collards, because her husband loves it. After that, she put the vegetables on the salads. When Michael opened the door, there was a table with many different genders waiting for him. "Hello, darling." His wife ran up to him. Only now she felt how much she missed him. "Adriana, come on." He was glad to see his family too. But what's the story? They sat down at the table. On such an occasion, Adriana, even with a bottle of wine. "Everything's fine, only we're very tired. That is, all the time I want. And you are not enough," he laughed. "You get the job done." She stood up and put him in a plate of salad. "Of course, there is nothing complicated," he began to say with his mouth full. And the pay, as she watched in anticipation. What was her husband going to say to her now? Oh, and he forgot the most important thing. He tapped himself in his pockets and then pulled out an impressive wad of money. "Wow," she looked at them. "I was also a little shocked when I saw how much they wanted to pay me." The husband admitted, "Listen, we will definitely fly somewhere." And from the next paycheck, the girl was happy. By that time, the passports should have been ready. Of course, everything for his favorite wife. He put his arm around her and led her towards the bedroom. "And what about dinner?" She looked at the table. "It's not going anywhere," her husband whispered in her ear. Afterward, they sat and talked for a long time. Michael told where they traveled, what they did there. At first, Adriana was interested, but when once again he started talking about some bushes, she got bored. "I completely forgot that you have to get up early tomorrow." He had already spoken today. She showed him the clock. "Let's go to bed then." And they retired to the bedroom again. The next day, they went to her parents' house, went for a walk, and that was all after Adriana came home from work. "Can you believe it? I looked at the calendar today, and it's time for me to go again." Michael told her tonight. "Yeah, I thought about it too, that the month went by too fast. It was sad to break up. But to tell you the truth, Adriana was so tired this month. She had to work, and then she also had to go out with her husband. Now that he was leaving, she wanted to work in peace, miss him, and meet him with renewed vigor. While Michael was away, the girl booked the vouchers. She could not be happy that the passports came on time. When Michael was home, the last day, they went and got them. And now Adriana was choosing a place where they would rest like white people. Adriana herself does not know why her choice fell on the Arab Emirates. She had looked at so many places, but she did not see such beauty as there. It was decided unequivocally that they would fly there. Hello was home again. "Michael, darling, let me tell you right away, we only have 2 days to get ready." "Well, you do, because I'd already got everything ready." She pointed to a room where there was a huge suitcase. "Did you put a down jacket and a fur coat in there?" Surprised husband. "Well, that you start there all the essentials." She took offense. "All right, I'm just kidding." He kissed her. Today they were not to suitcases. But all the next day, Michael wondered what besides underwear and a towel he could use in there. Michael and Adriana were only at the airport, but they already liked everything. The girl only sighed. How nice it would be for them in a few hours. She began to annoy her husband with her talk about Arabs. "Why? We're going to this country. We should know a little about it," she said indignantly. After the airplane, in which it was so uncomfortable to fly all these hours, and finally they are standing on the ground. "Here we are," loudly shouted the girl. "Now they will definitely say that the village has arrived," whispered in her husband's ear. "Why are you embarrassed of me?" asked him the girl. "Just do not yell. Everything will be fine," asked her Michael. Okay, if you want, I can keep quiet at all. She turned away. He could not believe it. He saw their bus, called Adriana, and they went along with the other tourists. The hotel was cool, just like the girl had seen in the picture. They were quickly settled in and now could fully enjoy the sea and sun. To the beach, the wife asked her husband. Maybe to the bar first. He looked at her. Okay, you go to the bar, and I'll go to the beach. She took a towel and left the room. Michael never showed up at the beach that day. Adriana was not upset about it. She was fine on her own. She was sunbathing in the sun and not living in the warm waters of the sea. Everything was wonderful. In the evening, when Adriana returned to the room, her husband was singing on the bed, sprawled out stargazing. Drunk, she said in her heart. After that, she took a shower and went downstairs to see what was going on while the pool music was playing. Adriana was just enjoying the evening. The next day, they took a boat tour. The husband, unfortunately, couldn't go on it, but Adriana went. It was worth the money. Hello. A local man approached her when they were already on deck. Hi, said cheerfully. Adriana, you are all alone. He spoke Russian well, but there was a strong accent. As you can see, she waved her hands. After that, this man came up to her more than once, complimented her, said beautiful words. Adriana just melted from how good he was and how he spoke. I wish I had a husband like you said. She said directly to the man's face. Such a woman should be happy. He sang like a nightingale. Your words to God's ears, she said quietly. Let's meet tomorrow. They suggested it. Why am I always alone anyway? Let's do it. Adriana was sure that her husband would be at the bar again today. Then we have a deal, Adriana. The man helped her down to the ground and climbed back up. All the men drove back to the hotel and Adriana with them. Just as she had anticipated, the husband was back at the bar. Do you want to sit here all day? She approached him. What do you suggest? Everything here is free. Michael was already pretty drunk. Okay, I'm not interested. She turned around and went to her room to change. Adriana waited for him to follow her, catch up with her, apologize. But that didn't happen. The morning was sunny. Adriana put on a transparent nika that reached her knees and went to the beach where she had an appointment. Hello, Queen, and was already waiting for her there. Hello, she blushed. It felt good to her to be treated like that by him. He took her hand and led her away from the beach. Where are we going? She asked. You'll see. He was still holding her hand. The girl felt such masculine strength coming from him. She could not believe that such men even existed. After a while, the red roofs showed themselves, but it was not quite clear what it was. It turned out to be a small cafe right on the beach. Fastened carpenters stood in the middle of the water above them. And there were those brightly colored roofs. Joe helped Adriana down. They settled down on the cushions. It was the Titanic and the coolness from the water. It's nice here, she told him. I wouldn't have brought you here otherwise, he said in a velvet voice. Let's order something, the girl asked him. And if you want, show me. He called for a waiter. They served various exotic fruits, which the girl had never tasted. She had never seen them. The order was placed. Now all that was left was to wait for it to arrive. Thank you for this paradise. Adriana looked at her companion. Thank you, beautiful. He kissed her hand. What words the girl had not heard today. She was having such a good time for the first time. When all the fruit was eaten, the illuminating liquid was drunk. The waiter brought the bill. I'll pay it. Made a gesture to the man good. At that moment, a thought flashed through Adriana's mind. What if he had told her to pay? And she had everything left in the room. After that, they walked along the edge of the sea some more, and the girl hurried home. She didn't see Joe again for the rest of the day, but she wanted to see him when they had to leave the next day. Adriana made up her mind. She took her money with her, put it in a small purse, put on a light dress, and went to where the yachts were parked. She realized she worked for one of them. Hello, Joe. She saw him on one of the decks. "Oh, hi." Immediately, he went to meet her. "I'm flying out tomorrow, and I'd like to spend the evening with you in one exhale," she said. "Okay, only I have things to do for now." He pointed to where he had just been, and no way to put it off. She made a sad face. "If I put it off, they won't give me any money." He was being honest with her. That's how it seemed to the girl. "It's okay. If that's the problem I have." She opened her purse. "Then go ahead." And he spoke through his white teeth. Once again, he led her to an unusual place that was right there on the beach. Now it was some sort of bungalows with tables inside. "Where do you find such beautiful places?" asked Adriana. "I know how to please the queen." He gave a thumbs up. If he didn't order anything last time, he was on top of his game today. At one point, Adriana even thought she wouldn't have enough money to pay for it. "Why are you sad?" he asked. "She is so reluctant to leave here," she said honestly. "Hopefully, because of me." He smiled his beautiful smile again. "Maybe you had something to do with it too." She was embarrassed. Later it was over. Adriana had given away almost all the money she had with her. But today she didn't spare anything. Just as long as the handsome man would say nice words to her and be there for her. She returned to the hotel. Her husband was asleep. She didn't expect anything else from him. In the morning, they were put on a bus that took them to the airport. After landing, takeoff, landing, and now they were home again. "How'd you burn out?" Considering Betty's daughter. "Yeah, there's good sunshine." She pulled out the souvenirs she brought on the table. "What about Michael?" a woman asked. It was better not to ask. Adriana turned away to avoid looking her mother in the eye. A fight, she realized. "No, we just vacationed in different places," the girl said. Michael was at home lying in bed. He still couldn't get over what he had done there on vacation. "Did you remember anything?" Adriana laughed at him. "Yeah," he nodded. "Good for you." The girl thought that next time she would go there alone. Her husband had to pack for another shift again. Adriana saw him off and sat down at the computer. When they parted in the hall, he handed her a piece of paper on which his mail was written. 2 days after her arrival, Adriana wrote to him, but he did not reply. She tried again. Maybe she had written something wrong, and again he didn't answer her. Then the girl thought that since he worked there, he had a lot of people like her. Why write? Michael arrived once again. He was so tired it was scary to look at him. He'd never been like this before, she wondered. "Pour me a drink," Michael asked. Only now she realized that the fatigue was not from work, but from something else, which most likely the man was doing on the train after the shift, when they were going home. "Are you jamming all the way?" she asked her husband. "And that we after such a long shift cannot even relax." For the first time in a while he raised his voice at her. "Oh, Michael, you'll be lost." She put some homemade wine on the table for him. "It's not up to you," he told her, and started unpacking the containers. Adriana did not want to watch all this. She decided to walk to her mom's for now. "Hi, what are you doing up so late?" Mom was sitting at the table. "I can't stay home." For the first time in her life, Adriana honestly admitted to her mother that this was how she looked at her husband, who was asleep on the couch. "Yeah, that's what my daughter," nodded her head. "No way." Betty covered her eyes with her hands. Adriana continued to work. She was doing it even more now, because she didn't want to be at home. Listening to her husband's ramblings, he and the men must be talking about their wives and girlfriends. So it turns out they're all walkers. The girl was quietly selling cakes, tea, and coffee. She really liked to please people who thanked her for it. "Come again," she said after the departing customers. When Michael was on another watch, the girl piked a message on the computer. She quickly sat down for it, opened the mail, and oh joy, she wrote Joe. How long had she waited for this letter? "What's wrong?" she wrote to him. "Why did you take so long to reply?" "Adriana, I'm in a terrible situation. I need money urgently. I wonder if you could give me some. I'll pay you back, I swear." A man wrote back. Sure, how much do you need? She was willing to help because it was such a nice man. I got $1,000 back. I'll wire it to you right away. Just give me the account number. There was not a single thought in her head. After she got the coveted numbers, she immediately transferred everything to the account. Thank you. She saw the message on the screen. Butterflies fluttered inside. She was happy he hadn't forgotten her. When things got bad, he turned to his queen for help. Adriana flew on wings for the first couple of days. She checked every hour to see if he'd write her anything. But Adriana, she got no more letters. Now when her husband came home, she just didn't talk to him. And on one visit, she gave him an ultimatum. It was either me or these friends of yours. With all the consequences, she told him. What does that mean? He didn't get it because he was already on the horn. Go away, Adriana said quietly. Inside, she had nothing more for this man. Adriana, I love you. He fell at her feet. I don't think you love me. You love her more. She nodded at the bottle on the table. Don't drive her away, he begged. If this happens again tomorrow, you take your stuff and get out of here. She was determined. After the girl told her mother about all this, she just cried. Daughter, why should you take it out on him? He'll get better. You just have to kill him a little. She told her, I see how I see my Golubov, all the work in the house on you. And he spit. Adriana, stay alone. Sadly, said the woman. So you're afraid of it? Adriana smiled. Joe immediately came to mind. No, I'm just saying I didn't want to discuss my family, Betty. Then don't tell me if you don't know. The girl went home and went to bed. In the morning, as usual, dough, stuffing, boiling water, and on the road. For some reason, there were few customers that day. It was slushy on the roads. I guess that's why nobody left the house. But she still managed to sell half of them. She came home, and Michael was in the same condition. She didn't say anything, took his bag, threw his stuff in it, and pushed him out the door. And then she pushed her husband in and walked him out the same way. That's all. And she fucked her hands like flour. After that, she sat down at the computer. Hey, Joe, what happened to you? I haven't heard from you. No word for so many days, Adriana wrote. She sat and looked where nothing else was written. The girl waited, but Joe never responded. She had already gotten up to clean the house. Suddenly, a bell rang. It was a text message. Adriana's hands even shook. She threw all her hands, wiped them right on the hem, sat down, and began to read. Hello. The one she had been waiting for so long was writing to her. You helped me a lot last time. I got out of it. I'm so happy for you that everything worked out so well. Adriana, and I didn't need any money, just as long as he wrote. You know what I'm thinking. The light of my eyes, that you'd come to me. I can't live without you. I want things to be good between us. I started my business, got a little out of season, lost my business. I was wondering if you could help me out. One more time. He asked Adriana for money again. Of course, she had already prepared to transfer it. Then send the same amount. The man didn't bother. It's done. A message from her. You have no idea how much I miss your eyes. You're the most beautiful. What's happened to me over the years? He showered me with compliments. I'm so glad you wrote me, don't be silent. Let me know how you're doing. At the end, she put a smiley face kiss. Soon we'll be together, my queen. That was his last message for the day. Mom, can I help you with something? Her happy daughter came to her, but then she saw her husband sitting at the table. Don't swear, he's leaving tomorrow. Betty told her, okay, if you know everyone who is doing this, then be happy. She walked out of her mother's and went home. But even that couldn't ruin the mood she was in. The next time Joe wrote was 2 weeks later. Now he needed money again, but to pay the taxes on the house so she could come there, or God forbid they would take it away. Once again, Adriana sent it to him. Her savings were running out very quickly. She realized that if he asked her a few more times, there would be nothing left at all. I'll probably go to live in another country soon. Adriana said to her mom. Why? She didn't understand. I will live and work there, calmly said the girl. I don't understand you. To a city that's close by. You did not want to. And now you are flying to another country. The woman looked at her daughter with frightened eyes. Do not worry, everything will be fine, said the girl. She came home. There was a message on the screen. Her heart rolled faster. Adriana realized that it was her beloved Joe writing to her, and it was really him. Hi. He started off beautifully. As always, hello. She would write to her favorite, but that was just her thinking, so she was shy for now. I want to tell you that I've sorted out all my affairs, and now I'm waiting for you to visit. I put a heart at the end of the alley. Of course, darling, I've been ready for this for a long time. She was sitting at her desk, her palms sweating with excitement. When can I expect you? Oh, sweetheart. He didn't say anything about tickets or anything. The rest was just about deadlines. I'll look up the tickets, and I'll leave as soon as I can. She really was glowing like the sun right now. Love you, my beautiful goddess. He said goodbye to her. The first thing to do was to get a divorce. That's why Adriana went to town. Afterward, she went to the ticketing place. She looked for the next flight. She was fine with it. It looked like she'd be at her macho man's place in a week. Mom, I'm going to Dubai, she announced. To a woman when she got back from the city. There's a woman sitting in a chair. I can't tell you what's going on yet, but there's a handsome prince waiting for me there. The girl blushed. You look, just don't get burned, warned her Betty. Everything will be fine. I know it for sure. Adriana was confident in herself and her man. She had all her papers and things packed. Now it was only a matter of time. Olenka, hello. She came to the neighbor girl again, hello. She was surprised. Listen, it's a shame to leave your business. Maybe you'll take care of it for a while. Adriana asked. What can I do? The one's eyes immediately sewed, and she knew how much Adriana was making there. You owe me 20% while I'm gone, and then we'll figure it out. That was the deal. All right, I'll give the money to your mom. That was the deal. Now I could leave with a calm heart. Back home, Adriana checked everything one more time. She took all the necessary clothes, documents, money, some jewelry. All that was left was to wait for the day when her plane would be there to take her to her lover. Mommy, I'm leaving tomorrow. So you want me to watch the house? Adriana came to her. Okay. You think I wouldn't have done it without your reminders? Told her Betty back. No, I just don't feel like saying goodbye. After all, it's not even a few kilometers away. They hugged. Where are you going? Dad went into the kitchen. She's just going on vacation abroad, Betty told her husband. Well, let it be so. Adriana agreed with her. She took her bags home and went to the station. The bus took a long time to jolt on the scraps. Adriana had never felt like this before. Now it felt like a washboard. Finally, they arrived in the city, from which it would still take 3 hours to get to the airport by train. But Adriana was not intimidated by any difficulties. She knew that there in a distant country she was loved and welcomed. Hello. Everyone was very polite. Adriana was being screened and checked in. Go ahead. She was invited onto the plane. She took her seat, closed her eyes to get some sleep. Her ears popped. So the plane was gaining altitude. After that, calmness. That's how the girl fell asleep. She was awakened only when they started serving food. It was not very comfortable, but she did not refuse. Dear passengers, our plane. She heard the voice of the stewardess. It meant that she had finally arrived, and in a few minutes she would see her handsome boyfriend. People crowded in as they descended, traveled, and received their luggage. Adriana was standing with her suitcase in her hand when she saw him. He was walking so tall, clean, handsome. Queen, you've come to see me, he hugged her. Hi. She could smell the scent she couldn't forget until now. Let's go. I'll drive you like a goddess. He gave her his hand. They reached the car, got in, and drove off. "How are you doing?" Adriana asked on the way. "I'm fine. I might even say great." He was showing her okay. "I'm so glad we're back together." She wanted to say something warm to the man. "I couldn't live without you." It was like being in the dark the whole time. He put his hand on her shoulder. They drove for a long time. It seemed like the end of the city, but Adriana said nothing. Finally, they pulled up to a house. It was small, beautiful. "Your hand, Queen." He opened the door for Adriana. "You are such a gallant suitor," she laughed. "Come in." He led her into the house. After that, they went into some room. Joe put Adriana's suitcase by the window. He offered her something to eat, a drink of water. She didn't refuse. Then the couple sat down at the table. "How am I going to live here? I don't know the language at all." The girl asked him. "It's okay. You'll get used to it." He smiled. There was some porridge and chips on the table. Adriana thought it was traditionally a bit skewed. Afterwards, she asked Ole where she could set up. "In this room for now. But tonight I'll show you another one," promised the girl. "Okay, I'm ready for anything." She smiled all the time because she was so happy to be with this man. "I'm so happy about it. But there's one catch. There's no food in the house at all. I've put all my money into business. Couldn't you buy something?" He looked at her with those honest eyes. "Joe, anything you say." She was ready to go to pieces just to make her man feel good. They left the house again, drove down the street, and stopped in front of a big store. Joev took out a large basket. It seemed to Adriana then that he began to put everything in it. The girl was surprised to herself, but said nothing aloud. At the checkout, she had to shell out a good amount of money, but she had no regrets, for now she would be with him and would definitely help him in everything. And now home, the goddess spoke. They quickly drove back. Then the man asked Adriana to make him something to eat. The dinner was lovely. Afterwards, they talked about how they met. Then Adriana admired the man, and then he kissed her and caressed her into the bedroom. "My love?" He asked her a question. "Yes," she exhaled. Even just his touch and scent alone made Adriana go crazy. She might as well not have been asked where they would go after this. Joe lifted her into his arms. They went into a room where there was a large bed. He laid her there himself, lay down beside her, and slowly began to undress her. "Are you so tender?" he whispered to her. "And you are so passionate," she answered him. Adriana had no one but her husband, so she did not know what to expect from this man. "Goddess," he kissed her from heels to top of her head. "Or God," she echoed him. After the intimacy occurred, the man lay down next to her. At that moment, the light in the room turned on. A woman ran in who often said something, but not a single word was incomprehensible. "Who is it?" Adriana was frightened. Key's translator advised her. He himself lay very calmly. Adriana took the phone with trembling hands. She did not understand what was going on and why Joe was so calm. Finally, she found the function the man was talking about, selected the language and pressed turn on. "I am this man's wife, and if I call the police now, you're going to jail," screamed the woman. "What's going on again?" she asked Joe. "Give her your passport." Also calmly said Joe. Adriana. "Why?" She didn't understand. "Otherwise she will now call the authorities, and you will go to jail for a long time. In our country, you can't have sex with a married man." It was a wall of stone. Not a muscle in his face wavered. "I love you," Adriana cried. "I love you," Adriana cried. "And I love you. But it won't help you." He looked at the woman he called his wife, and then pointed to Adriana's purse on the suitcases. "Aha, just said." She rushed to the things. DK revealed her passport, money and jewelry. Everything was in her hands. "I don't get it," screamed the guest. That's when Joe forcefully slapped her across the face. After that, it was all a blur. She was being dragged somewhere. She woke up from a pungent odor when she opened her eyes, and sat on the floor. Turns out she was in some kind of basement. "Joe," she screamed, but no one heard her. "Help," cried Adriana. So she sat in that room for about 3 days. At one point, she just lost track of time. And then he came to her. Her God, she said. A few days ago, he shouted to her, "Joe, what's going on? Why are you doing this to me? I've done so much for you." She started crying and crawled to him. "Get away." He almost kicked her voice with his foot. The man's was no longer so gentle and velvet. He was angry. "What do you want?" she asked. "Is there still money in the account?" He asked. What money? In what account? Adriana did not understand. All this time, she had not been fed or fed. "Adriana," said he with that accent with which they call all Russian girls, that she raised her eyes to him. "Do you have money?" It was obvious that he didn't like to repeat himself. "I do." She couldn't lie because she thought it would help her. On transferring everything to me, he handed her the laptop. The girl did as she was told. She hoped he would let her go after that, but he just snatched the computer out of her hands. "Listen to me carefully." He sat over her ear. "Yeah." She thought there'd be instructions. "I'm going to take you upstairs now. Chain bike to a table that's built into the floor. You'll cook for my wife and me. Do whatever we tell you. You'll sleep here. I'll come over once in a while." At that moment, he ran his hand over her cheek. What did that mean? She didn't understand. It was like a movie. "It means that if you don't give me more money in a few days, I'll send you to a brothel, and they'll spare no expense for you." He laughed. "Asshole." She threw him in the back. But Joe was walking. He kept laughing. Adriana sat in the dark basement. She didn't know what to do now. She was in a foreign country with no papers, no phone. What should she do? Who would rescue her? There were so many questions in her head and not a single answer to them. Adriana cried. How she could only believe this scammer. It was only now that she compared everything and realized that she had just fallen for this same slave. "You're here," yelling at her hours later. "No, gone," she snarled. "We're hungry." He put a chain around her leg and led her like a dog. "Why are you doing this to me? Saying those words to me?" And now I was still trying to make him feel sorry for me. "Girl, shut up." He yanked the chain. So Adriana almost fell. She stood at the stove, cooking by herself, looking around the axle, but there was nothing of the sort around. The idea of a knife flashed through her mind. What if she threw it at him with it? What if it didn't hit, but she was really good at throwing them at school? "What are you up to?" Joe said to her as if he'd read her mind. "Nothing." She was chopping vegetables. When it was done, the man took her down to the basement again and brought her a bucket of water. "Pray," he told her. And in the night he came. By now, there was nothing pleasant Adriana felt anymore, only disgust for that hair freak. He did all his business and got up. "Am I going to stay here again?" She looked up at him. "No, I'll put you in your crib," he said snidely. The girl cried again. During that night, she had examined the whole wall, windows that had bars on them. "Would you rather go to jail than sit here?" She shouted loudly, but she knew no one could hear her. Adriana lay on the mattress. She was cold. She was going crazy with what was going on in her head. "Get up." He came after her again. "What do you want her to do tomorrow?" "Nothing." She shut up. He slapped her face with the palm of his hand. Day after day went by like that. Adriana didn't know what day or date it was. She was trying to find a loophole to get out of this unfortunate house. "I need money." Again he came to her. "I don't have any more." She was telling the truth. "So I called your beloved mother." He held her phone in his hand. She jumped up to take it away from him. And what do you think? It wouldn't work. He put his hand up. Adriana was crying again. At some point, the girl felt a draft. It had never happened here before. She groped around for where the air was coming from. It was the ventilation. She tried to pull the grate. It gave way. Fear shook her inside and out. "My queen, I'm coming for you." She heard a voice on the steps. Adriana quickly put the bars back in place and lay down on the mattress as if she had slept there. So, tired, sleep. He sat down next to her. After she didn't answer him, he got up and poured cold water on her from a bucket. "Are you crazy? It's not hot enough in here," she shouted at him, and at the same moment she received a slap. "You'd better keep quiet, or they'll do something else to you." He squeezed her cheeks hard. "Yeah, fuck you." She didn't care where she went, but she had to get out of this basement. At night, when Joe left, she removed the ventilation grate again, and it was impossible to pull herself up by her arms. She had eaten very little in the meantime, so the girl used all the same bucket. When she tapped it on, she lurked like a mouse, but she heard nothing. Adriana climbed into the pipe and crawled forward, but just as she expected. At the end was a propeller that was spinning. It must not have worked before, so she couldn't feel it blowing somewhere. Shit. Anna couldn't help herself. After crawling back to the basement, putting the grate back in place, she realized she didn't have the energy for a second try today. My joy. A man walked toward her this morning. "Not a good morning to you either." She looked at him with a glare. "If you're rude, I'll punish you." He smiled. "Yeah, much more than that." She walked over to the table where she was always cooking. While she was doing all this, she saw that there were wooden sticks on the table and decided to take them with her. "What have you got there?" "Put it back," said the tyrant to her. "Asshole." Once again, she said. At that moment, Adriana saw a calendar by the number that was marked today. She realized that she had been here for over a month. Something said, "Sweetie," interjected at her. "What did you hear?" She continued to cut and stir. After that, she was sent to the basement again. The girl used to eat what was left on the table while the dish was cooking. Now she'd take some with her if Joe didn't see it. Today she was carrying a few slices of bread. Joe hadn't been heard from all day. Adriana took up the bucket again. Suddenly, its muzzle clattered. The girl was startled. Then her eyes lit up. The Dushka. She would be the one to help her. Adriana remembered her father teaching her how to pull out the noose when the bucket in the well was breaking from that very part. "Thank you, Daddy," she said in a whisper and carefully removed the thin but sturdy iron. And again, she set the bucket up, sliding it inside the pipe. As at that moment she heard footsteps. Adriana did not remember herself from fear. She got out of there so quickly, and the grate and placed herself on the mattress. "She was waiting for me." He came to her. "No," she was shaking like a leaf. "Well, we'll just have to put up with a named guest." He tore off her shirt, which was the only piece of clothing she had. After he left, and some time passed, Adriana tried again, and must crawl to the screw, abruptly shoved the sole from the bucket there. And it stopped. She herself doesn't know how she managed to squeeze through that little hole that let her out. But Adriana had done it. The girl realized that she couldn't show her face on the street like that. She saw something hanging outside the house. It was a tablecloth or a blanket, but it didn't matter. Adriana wrapped it around herself, and in it she walked down Night Street. It was scary, but she had to hide somewhere, and she went up to the roof of one of the houses. There was grass growing there. You couldn't see it. It was soft at the same time. Can you imagine? Someone stole a plate from a neighbor at night. I heard Russian speech. But at the same moment, a man said something not in Russian. Adriana understood. The woman was probably on the phone. What to do? What to do? She wanted to cry, but she couldn't relax. It was good that no one had noticed her here before nightfall. The girl realized that the grass on the roof was growing for a reason, some flowers tending the edges. She walked down to the sidewalk, determined to find some store to ask for something to eat. "Hey," she heard from the side of the house. Adriana got scared. I started to back away. A man approached her. He was dressed almost identically to her. "Hello, help me." She pleaded without shaking her head that she didn't understand anything. She tried to get away from him. She realized that this man was in rags for a reason. Maybe he's capturing his own kind and then turning them over to his masters. Where are you taking me? She was afraid to scream. He put his finger to his lips. They'd reached an archway. There the man jumped, and it was already as if on another street. The girl saw some boxes, some boards, some children sitting there, where we seemed to her that she was in a nightmare, and now she's going to wake up. And she's at her mom's house. A woman came out to meet us. She was the same indeterminate age as the one who brought her here. They handed her some bread. Thank you. She nodded. Then a man started a fire in some iron utensils right outside. Adriana saw that he was splashing from some kind of jar. She moved closer, getting warmer. Adriana thought of taking the jar with her, but who would just give it to her? She looked around, and it looked like the lowest stratum of the population lived here. How do you live here? She cried. The woman gave her some kind of pizza. It smelled so bad that Adriana almost threw up. She stood up, gestured for her to go, but the man grabbed her arm again. He said something and pointed to the sky. The son guessed the girl, those nodded their heads. But how could she walk the streets unhindered when everyone would see her? She agreed with them anyway that they were in the basement. When Adriana lay down on one of the boards they offered her, these people up above was a canopy. She thought, where is she going? Who will believe her? Tears flowed with renewed vigor from her eyes. Adriana was so angry that nothing could stop her. She thought she would stay here until tomorrow, and then get revenge on Joe. Can I have this? She asked the woman in the morning, pointing to the bottle. The woman only spread her hands. I don't know what it was. Either I don't understand or I don't know. I'll take it. Adriana decided to do something different, and she took what she needed and put it in her pocket. The woman started to say something. She took out what she had just put in her pocket, then went around the corner and brought back the same one, but a new one. And the matches showed Adriana the gesture of a lighter. They looked at each other like two crazy people. Nobody understood anything. After Adriana began to remember the game of crocodile, where all actions are described without the help of sounds, and she started to show a fire. But in order to have one, you have to light it. Then the woman understood and brought her a lighter. Here's thanks, kind people, she said. The girl waited until it was dark. She walked back to where they came from, the poor people. But no matter how much she told her to, she could not find the road from which they had come. Had to go back and gesticulate again. The old man seemed to understand her. He took her hand again and led her to that very ark. How interesting. She herself had passed by here many times, but had not noticed it, and once again the girl thanked her already on the road. First, she went to the house that had grass on the roof. By it she could orient herself where that ill-fated cellar, in which she spent many days. This was definitely it. She saw that the place where the vent was. It was definitely him. She saw the place where the vent was plugged with plywood. Adriana whispered a couple times with her foot. The plywood flew off. Then she spilled the hot liquid wherever she could and threw the rest into the vent and set it on fire. Help me. They're keeping me in the basement. She screamed and ran in the direction where she could hear Russian speech. The girl climbed onto the roof, where she spent the whole night in the grass, and then looked down. Help. She saw a woman in the window. Who are you? Oh my God. She clutched her heart. My name is Adriana. I'm from Russia. I was called to visit by your neighbor Joe, and he himself forcibly kept me in the basement. She spoke quickly. At that moment there was a loud and terrible explosion. The woman in the house crouched down, and Adriana pressed her head to the ground. She was sure it was the gas in Joe's house that had exploded. And then a car with flashers arrived. The woman Adriana had asked for help from showed her where she was. They barely got her off the roof because she was struggling. Local homeless people were found and accused of arson, but they pointed out to Adriana that she was the one who took the liquid. The girl was brought to the station, and an interpreter was assigned to her. I told you I did it. I just resisted. She couldn't explain for an hour why she did it. The man in uniform said something fast and inarticulate to the interpreter, confusingly translating. "Well, what am I going to get the death penalty now?" She looked at the man who was now serving as an interpreter between her and the police. "No, perhaps a fine and deportation. Banned from crossing the border forever." He told her, "Yes, I'm both hands in favor." Adriana nodded her head several times. She was taken to a cell and they discussed something for a long time. The footage was all over the news. What a miracle that Michael was watching the news. He stopped drinking. He'd gotten smart and was renting again in the city. "That's Adriana, my Adriana." He heard her say she was kept in the basement, crying. The man didn't sit still. He called one number, called another, and wondered what to do in such cases. But it all worked out. Adriana was indeed deported, and she was able to return to Russia without documents. A trial was held there. She was recognized as a victim, so no charges were assigned. Just one fine for defacing city property. She drove to the village thin and embittered against the world. Adriana heard a man's voice from behind her, shuddered, turned around. Michael stood in front of her. "What are you doing here?" She asked him in a husky voice. "I saw you on the news. Tried to do something, but I didn't know how. Then I waited to hear from you, but I didn't." You could see he wanted to feel sorry for her, to hold her close. But the ex-husband was afraid. "Forgive me at this point," spoke Adriana. "For what?" He came up, put his arms around her, and pressed her against him. "How stupid was I?" She was sobbing. Nothing happens to everyone in life. As best he could, he soothed the girl. "Only it could happen to me, because I am a village fool who has never been anywhere and has never seen anything." She continued screaming loudly and sobbing at the same time. "No need to beat yourself up like that," he told her quietly. They were already approaching the house. All she stood in front of him, and in a second she calmed down, wiped her tears. What didn't he understand? Mom can't know anything. Even if she ever caught wind of this news, it was a long time ago, and not true. Adriana blinked once more, smiled, and she and Michael walked into the house. "Hi, here I am." She stood in the middle of the kitchen, but no one came out to see her. Couldn't they be somewhere else? Michael asked quietly. "I don't know. It's too late to work." Adriana walked quietly through the rooms, but there was no one there. They went outside. Pigs, chickens, goats, cows, all in place. No, just the owners. Then Adriana suggested that they might have gone to her house to do something there. That's where they went. Michael saw from afar that the light was on in the windows and that they were not sitting at home. The girl didn't understand. Now we'll ask them. They entered the house. "Hello." Adriana couldn't understand anything. Mother and father were sitting in their shirts and drinking tea after the bath. "Daughter, where are you from?" They stood up to meet her. "I have a question for you too. What are you doing here? Isn't your house enough? Or do you like my little bathhouse better than your huge one?" The girl smiled. "My father and I thought about it and decided that you would go to that house. But as I see, now you are not alone, and we will stay here." The woman concluded, "Well, that's good for you. And the cattle." She looked at her mother and father. "If you want it, slaughter it and sell it. You don't want to take care of it and raise it. There'll always be meat later." Her mother gave her the freedom of choice. "I see." She sat down on the bench, saw the milk in the jar, took a sip. "I want to tell you that our country, our people and our men are the best in the world. There's nowhere else like it." She tilted the jar again and drank it all down. "It's as if you hadn't drunk milk all your life." Mom was surprised at the change in her daughter's behavior. I hadn't. She was sober, but happy drunk. Here she was with her mom, dad, and even Michael, whom she herself had kicked out of the door. The girl cried. "Adriana, what's wrong?" The woman asked her. "Nothing." She shook her head. After everything, Michael picked her up, and together they walked home to where her mother and father had lived not long ago. "Can I stay with you?" he asked quietly. Of course, she hugged him. They lay in the night and were silent. Adriana, will you marry me again? He asked her. And will you forgive me for all the things I have done? She wondered too. What did you do? He turned to her, didn't pretend he didn't understand. She turned and hugged her former future husband too. I never pretended at all. It was bad. I started drinking. And when everything is good, there's no need to drink, he said. So you were bad with me if you started doing it at that time. She was surprised. Not at work. But I couldn't leave until we got to the point where we were contracted. Just like you in that basement, I was on my watch. He kissed her on the nose. Michael, you're so good. Forgive me, you fool. She turned away from him, and he put his arm around her. Just put his arm around Adriana. And they fell asleep. And in the morning, they told their parents they were getting married. They were happy for them. You see, I told you not to be so hard on yourself. The mother hugged her daughter. Now I will always obey you. Adriana cried. The picture of her sitting in the basement came back to her eyes. There was no one to blame but herself. She had done it all with her own hands, even though it was her fault. But if it hadn't been for Adriana and her love, he might have forgotten about her. As last time, the young people went to the city to get married in the registry office there, and afterward came to the village. Now there were no more off-site registrations. Michael and Adriana decided to get married in a church. Everything was ready for it. The village was fully assembled. Guys, I wish you only happiness, as in my childhood to my daughter. And now, said Betty to the newlyweds, I had to lose you and get a divorce to find my happiness. Took her in his arms again and began to twirl Michael around. Everything's going to be okay. Adriana believed that. She talked to Sofia about how things were going while she was away. It turned out to be pretty good. Michael still had all of his savings left that he hadn't had time to spend anywhere. Husband and wife started building a small store, a cafe right there on the highway. Drivers who passed by often all knew that this place had the most delicious pies and also meat and eggs. Adriana was happy with her man and what she'd missed about him before. I love you. She went up to him every time and kissed him. What's gotten into you? He laughed. He just wanted to say it, and she laughed. I'm so happy when you smile. He was being honest with her.